Chapter 515. Everyone knew that among the three princes, the third prince had the lowest status and was the least likely to become the crown prince. Hence, when the third prince visited them previously, they all tacitly refused to meet him. Relatively speaking, the eldest prince and the second prince had a 99% chance of succeeding, while the third prince was less than 1%. But now, the third prince had invited Senior Shu. Did this mean that Senior Shu had decided to support the third prince? This news was terrifying. Senior Shu might only be a legendary figure in the academy, but in the outside world, he was someone who could influence the power of a nation. His identity as a rank 5 beast appraiser alone was more than enough. Appraiser Yin and the others exchanged glances. They could tell that the situation between the three princes was about to change. Outside the banquet hall, the three princes were already standing there to welcome their guests. The beast appraisers they had invited arrived first, followed by the princess of Thousand Island Country and the envoy. Currently, the three princes stood to one side, waiting. The eldest prince, Feng Xiong, and the second prince, Feng Zishan, stood at the front. There was nothing much to be said between them, while Feng Ziqian stood at the back. Although his two elder brothers were rivals, they both looked down on Feng Ziqian. To them, Feng Ziqian was the weakest and the least likely to compete with them. Hence, he should be the first to be eliminated. Once he was eliminated, the two of them would be able to face off against each other without any reservations. This was the consensus between the two princes. The second prince, Feng Zishan, looked more mature. Unlike the eldest prince, Feng Xiong, he looked more like a scholar. I heard that big brother even invited the royal preceptor. How generous, Feng Zishan said with a chuckle, sounding like he was testing the waters. At this, Feng Xiong's face lit up with glee. Being able to invite the royal preceptor was indeed something to be proud of. Everyone knew of the royal preceptor's status. Even his father had to treat him with utmost respect. The fact that the royal preceptor was willing to attend meant that he would support Feng Xiong. With the royal preceptor's influence, Feng Xiong had a high chance of becoming the crown prince. Second brother is well informed. Not bad. The imperial preceptor has come to attend this banquet despite his busy schedule. He indeed thinks highly of me. I also hope that second brother will support big brother and not resist. Feng Xiong seized the opportunity to speak, and his intentions were very direct, just like his style of doing things. Feng Zishan smiled. Of course I support big brother. I've always been like this. Compared to Feng Xiong, Feng Zishan was much more scheming. He only said that he would support, but did not mention what he would support. Although Feng Xiong was honest, he was not stupid. Second brother, don't laugh at me. You know what I'm talking about. You should know that when it comes to choosing a successor, it has always been to choose the older, not the younger. Why do you have to fight over it? You even have to cherish our brotherhood. Don't worry. When I become the successor, I won't mistreat you. After all, you're my younger brother. This time, Feng Xiong was quite direct and obvious. Feng Zishan smiled again. Big brother, I'll say it again. I support you, but when it comes to choosing a crown prince, whether it's you, me, or third brother, none of us have a say in this. That's father's decision. Zishan, don't dare to say too much and guess father's intentions. Feng Xiong's expression changed. He knew that he was being too impatient. According to Feng Zishan, he was the one guessing father's intentions and interfering in such an important matter. Feng Xiong's heart skipped a beat. He glared at Feng Zishan without saying another word. He knew his own personality well. The more he spoke, the more mistakes he would make. The royal preceptor had told him this before. Feng Xiong still wasn't calm enough. His second brother was too shrewd. A rank 4 beast appraiser is here. Someone whispered. Feng Xiong immediately became spirited. He knew that this time, he had the greatest chance. After all, the Grand State Preceptor personally came to support him. At that time, he would be the most likely to win the heart of the Thousand Island Princess. Not only would he make the Spiral Nation proud, but he would also be able to marry the princess of another country and strengthen himself. The position of Crown Prince would definitely be his. At this thought, Feng Xiong grew excited again. Feng Zishan's expression was calm. but he was secretly anxious. He had been working hard all these years, hoping to surpass Feng Ziyong. He believed that his father liked him more, or else he wouldn't have been so hesitant about choosing the crown prince. If the crown prince was outstanding and had won his father's favor, Feng Zishan wouldn't have stood a chance no matter how much effort he put in. Now that there was a chance, it meant that his father was hesitating. His father also thought that Feng Ziyong was all brawn and no brains, so he wasn't fit to rule the country. This was the reason why the three princes were fighting for the crown prince position. Of course, as for the third prince, Feng Ziqian, he was only allowed to participate. Feng Zishan didn't see his younger brother as a worthy opponent. He believed that his father felt the same way. He only allowed Feng Ziqian to participate in the competition to show fairness. Hence, Feng Zishan knew that his biggest rival was still his eldest brother, Feng Ziyong. Feng Zishan often visited the royal preceptor. He knew how important the royal preceptor was to the Spiral Nation and his father. A rank 5 beast appraiser was one of the major pillars of a nation. If anyone could gain the royal preceptor's support, they would stand a better chance. Unfortunately, the royal preceptor didn't seem to like him and chose to support Feng Ziyong instead. No matter how scheming Feng Zishan was, this was still his biggest weakness. Fortunately, he managed to invite 2 rank 4 beast appraisers this time, so he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. As for his third brother, Feng Ziqian, based on Feng Zishan's knowledge, he probably wouldn't even be able to invite a rank 4 beast appraiser. If that happened, he would definitely embarrass himself. Just then, the first appraiser arrived at the scene. It was an old man with an extraordinary aura. One look, and Feng Zishan's heart skipped a beat. This old man wasn't an average person. The reason was simple. He was walking at a slow pace, but none of the other beast appraisers behind him dared to overtake him. What did this mean? It meant that this old man held great influence in the hearts of the other beast appraisers. But the problem was, this old man wasn't the royal preceptor, Sima Qing. Feng Ziqian didn't even know who he was. That's impossible. Feng Zishan was in disbelief and began to panic. After all, he knew and had met most of the rank 4 beast appraisers in the Spiral Academy. Even if he hadn't met them before, he still had information on them. However, this old man was a complete blank to him. It wouldn't have mattered if this old man was just an unknown beast appraiser. But seeing how the other beast appraisers were walking respectfully behind him, Feng Zishan knew that this old man couldn't be an average beast appraiser. What's going on? Feng Zishan turned to look at his trusted aide behind him. The latter was clearly clueless and at a loss for what to do. Not only was Feng Zishan dumbfounded, but Feng Ziyong was as well. He thought that the person walking in front was the royal preceptor, but upon closer inspection, that wasn't the case. He didn't even see the royal preceptor's shadow. Chapter 516. Where's the state preceptor? Who is this old man? Feng Ziyong immediately asked his trusted aide. Very soon, a guard ran over in advance and recounted what had happened at the entrance. Feng Ziyong and Feng Zishan were both shocked. An appraiser invited by third brother? Senior Shu? I've never heard of him. Feng Ziyong's eyes widened. Third brother, I didn't expect you to be so secretive. Feng Zishan said meaningfully. They were naturally shocked, especially when they found out that this senior Shu had subdued the state preceptor the moment he appeared and even tore off the state preceptor's 5-ring sleeve. Not only was the state preceptor not angry, he even knelt down to apologize and went back to reflect. Feng Ziyong could be seen pinching his thigh. It looked like he thought he was dreaming. Feng Zishan's reaction was obviously much faster than Feng Ziyong's. He sat down almost immediately and pulled Feng Ziqian over, as if there was a deep brotherly bond. Then, when he saw the senior walking over, he said, "Third brother, you're really amazing. Quickly introduce this senior to me." Feng Ziqian was even more dumbfounded than him. I don't know him." These were Feng Ziqian's exact words, and they were the truth. Feng Zishan's expression froze, thinking that Feng Ziqian had said that on purpose. "Third brother, you sure know how to joke." Feng Zishan immediately bowed at Shu Xiaolu with utmost respect. Feng Ziyong was dumbfounded by this scene. Feng Zishan's thoughts were simple. If this senior Shu could make the state preceptor kneel and apologize, how could he be an ordinary person? Just then, Feng Zishan seemed to recall something. He had heard that the Heavenly Jade Academy had such a profound background that the royal family wouldn't dare to meddle with. There was also a legendary figure in the academy, and it was said that the previous masters of the Beast Evaluation Pavilion were all his students. At first, Feng Zishan thought that this was just a legend, but now he believed that this legend was probably true. Today, he had seen this legendary figure with his own eyes. This was the only way to explain the state preceptor's kneeling and apologizing. Hence, this bow of his didn't make him look bad at all. Thinking further ahead, if he could establish a good relationship with this legendary figure, he might receive even greater benefits than the support of the state preceptor. Lin Jin was currently standing behind Xu Xiaolu. When he saw the man bowing deeply, he knew he must be a prince. It could be judged from his clothes and demeanor. Feng Zishan greets Senior Xu. Today, Zishan is fortunate to be able to see Senior's immortal face. It is my honor. Many people in the surroundings saw Feng Zishan's actions. Some are puzzled, while others secretly gave him a thumbs up. Compared to Feng Zishan, the first Prince Feng Ziong was a little more wooden. Right now, Feng Ziong was still thinking about who this old man was. He even wanted to find the Grand Preceptor and ask him about it. Xu Xiaolu merely nodded at Feng Zishan's greeting before turning to glance at Lin Jin, asking him if he should wait or go in first. Lin Jin had no idea. Fortunately, Feng Ziqian came to his senses. Although he didn't know what exactly happened, Appraiser Lin must have called this old man here. That was enough. And so, Feng Ziqian hurried over and ushered Lin Jin and Xu Xiaolu into the hall. Behind them, Feng Ziong and Feng Zishan began conversing softly with the rank 4 beast appraisers they had invited. They were obviously discussing Senior Xu. By the time everyone entered, Feng Zishan's expression was burning with passion. He would occasionally glance at Xu Xiaolu with a hint of intimacy in his eyes. Feng Ziong's expression turned complicated. His greatest reliance was the state preceptor, but to think that the state preceptor would be reprimanded by this Senior Xu. Logically speaking, the man was an enemy, not a friend. But Feng Ziong was no fool. He could only curry favor with this Senior Xu, not antagonize him. Now, he understood why his second brother would bow to Senior Xu. It was because the man had noticed this from the start. Everyone had different thoughts. Feng Ziqian had also learned about what happened from his trusted aide. He was now the most excited of them all and wanted to ask Lin Jin about it in detail. At the same time, Feng Ziqian had a huge question on his mind. The Senior Xu he met at Lin Jin's Peach Blossom abode wasn't like this. Could there be 2 Senior Xu? Feng Ziqian wanted to ask, but Lin Jin knew it wouldn't be easy to explain, so he waved his hand. Don't ask. I wouldn't know what to say even if you ask. Let's get down to business first. Business first was to settle the matter of today's banquet. Feng Ziqian understood the gravity of the situation, so he quickly nodded. However, his doubts only deepened. After Xu Xiaolu took her seat, no one dared to disturb her. However, Lin Jin, who was familiar with Xu Xiaolu's personality, knew that she was doing this on purpose. Then, Lin Jin leaned over and whispered, "Thank you for what you did earlier." He was referring to how the state preceptor made things difficult for him, and how Xu Xiaolu stood up and reprimanded the state preceptor. Xu Xiaolu opened her eyes and whispered back, "It's nothing." Just then, an envoy came in to announce that the Thousand Island Nation's envoy had arrived. "Everyone, let's welcome them outside." Feng Ziong had to follow the Crown Prince's example. Having said that, he got up and headed outside. The others followed suit, including Feng Zishan and Feng Ziqian. The other rank 4 beast appraisers did the same. Xu Xiaolu was the only one who remained unmoved. However, given her status, no one dared to say anything. Finally, Appraiser Yin seized the opportunity to whisper to Lin Jin, "Appraiser Lin, you're not being nice." Lin Jin knew Appraiser Yin would say that, so he feigned ignorance. "What do you mean, Appraiser Yin? You're still pretending?" Appraiser Yin was furious. "Yesterday, when Mr. Zhong and I went to look for you, it was Senior Xu who stopped us. Back then, I guess that you knew Senior Shu. But today, it seems like it's more than that. Senior Shu reprimanded the state preceptor because the state preceptor was against you. Appraiser Lin, it seems like your relationship with Senior Shu isn't that simple. Lin Jin knew that Appraiser Yin was a veteran rank 4 beast appraiser with excellent judgment. This couldn't be hidden from him. I only got to know Senior Shu recently, Lin Jin answered honestly. Appraiser Yin chuckled and said, "Introduce me." "No problem," Lin Jin agreed readily. Appraiser Yin paused for a moment before whispering, "Right, I've been wanting to talk to you about Appraiser Yang. Strictly speaking, Appraiser Yang isn't a bad person. I think there must be some misunderstanding here." Appraiser Yin was clearly referring to the incident where Lin Jin was attacked. Although there was no conclusion yet, the entire academy was spreading rumors that Appraiser Yang was the one who attacked Appraiser Lin out of jealousy. After failing, he fled, and his whereabouts were still unknown. Lin Jin nodded. "Appraiser Yin, you're right. I think there must be some misunderstanding." Chapter 517. By now, the group had exited the main hall. There was a group of carriages coming their way, and judging by their attire, they didn't seem to be of Zhongzhou's style. The Thousand Island Nation was located in the East Continent's Thousand Islands. Their culture and customs were completely different from this place. This was obvious from their attire. Feng Xiong and the others went up to greet them and chatted happily with the Thousand Island Nation's envoy. Just then, a well-dressed woman came down from one of the carriages. This woman was escorted by many female officials. She was dressed luxuriously and wore a veil over her face. Her figure was lithe and graceful. As she walked over, a fragrant breeze wafted through the air. In terms of manners, she was the cream of the crop. Only a royal princess would have such upbringing and manners. Needless to say, this woman must be the princess of the Thousand Island Nation who was here for the marriage. Judging from the pair of eyes behind the veil, this princess must be a stunning beauty as well. However, it was awkward to have a layer of benefits added to the relationship between a man and a woman. If it were Lin Jin, he definitely wouldn't like such a marriage. The 3 princes each had their own style. Even the taciturn eldest prince, Feng Xiong, was talking nonstop, not neglecting the honored guest at all. Lin Jin's gaze shifted from the princess to the metal cages. It seemed like the rare beasts from the Thousand Island Nation were kept within. However, the cages were wrapped in a silver cloth so Lin Jin couldn't see what was inside. The envoy of the Thousand Island Nation was an eloquent man. He had a pleasant conversation with the 3 princes, and the atmosphere was cordial. "Envoy Liu, please don't stand on ceremony. This banquet is considered a private one. Let's eat, drink, and chat behind closed doors. There's no need to be so reserved." Feng Xiong was straightforward, and his words carried a unique, domineering air. Envoy Liu, on the other hand, did not forget the purpose of his visit. He laughed and said, "We can all feel the first prince's hospitality. Our princess is also very grateful to the 3 princes for their hospitality." Envoy Liu was clearly saying that the main character this time wasn't him, but the princess of the Thousand Island Nation. Now that everyone had entered the main hall, the lone person sitting in the library was naturally conspicuous. Envoy Liu was stunned, confused. He even felt a tinge of displeasure. When everyone came out to welcome Her Highness, why was there still someone sitting there? How rude. However, they were guests, so it was not appropriate for them to say this out loud. Could he be the imperial advisor of Tian Xian? Envoy Liu thought to himself. He felt that the person's age matched the criteria, so even though he was unhappy, he could only pretend that he didn't see it. After all, the status of the state advisor of Sky Spiral Nation was not to be trifled with. A lowly envoy like him couldn't afford to offend him. Everyone took their seats. Since the beginning, Lin Jin had only been a bystander. He had been chatting with Appraiser Yin the entire time, and now that they were back at their respective seats, Lin Jin started whispering to Xu Xiaolu. In fact, only a few people were listening to the conversation between the 3 princes and the envoy from Thousand Island Nation. Most of them kept glancing at Lin Jin and Little Library from time to time. Appraiser Lin and Senior Shu are so close. Appraiser Wang looked envious. That's right. It's a pity that we don't have such an opportunity, appraiser Yin said with a lowered head. At this time, some waiters and palace maids brought food and wine. The atmosphere immediately became lively. Some toasted and laughed. The Thousand Island Princess also chatted with the three princes. It could be seen that the three princes were trying their best to show off, hoping to leave a good impression on this foreign princess. Xu Xiaolu took a sip of wine and shook her head. The wine is mediocre and the food is mediocre. I thought it would be fun, but I didn't expect it to be so boring. Xu Xiaolu would never say this to anyone else. It was only when she was with Lin Jin that she would reveal her true nature. Xu Xiaolu, are you here to eat? Lin Jin retorted bluntly. We're here to support Feng Ziqian and also to see the rare beast from Thousand Island Nation. If you really want to taste the food and drink, I'll take you to a restaurant next time. It's definitely better than here. Xu Xiaolu's eyes lit up. That's a deal. Lin Jin smiled. Don't worry, I won't bully you. Just then, Messenger Lu had 3 large cages brought in and placed them in the main hall. He then stood up and said, His Majesty the Emperor of Thousand Island Nation has bestowed upon us 3 rare beasts to accompany Her Highness to Spiral Nation. Consider them part of the princess's dowry. I've long heard of Spiral Nation's beast appraiser skills and how they can identify all rare beasts in the world. Her Highness would like to invite all 3 princes and beast appraisers to appraise these 3 rare beasts together. Here comes business. Lin Jin and Xu Xiaolu stopped their conversation and turned to look at the 3 cages in the main hall. The other beast appraisers did the same. Messenger Lu was about to say something when the Thousand Island Princess suddenly got up and dismissed him. She then walked to the center of the hall and said, Your Highness and fellow beast appraisers, Ruoli has known that Spiral Academy is a sacred place for beast appraisers ever since I was in Thousand Island Nation, and I've been looking forward to it ever since. This time, Father has requested for one of us sisters to marry into Spiral, so Ruoli took the initiative to come here. This banquet is actually for Ruoli to choose her future husband. I believe all 3 princes are aware of this. Everyone was stunned. Everyone knew about this, but none of them mentioned it in front of everyone. Who would have thought that Her Royal Highness would take the initiative to expose this fact and say it out loud? She sure had a shrewd personality. Since we're here to choose Ruoli's future husband, I should naturally be the one to choose. Among these 3 rare beasts, one of them is Ruoli's pet beast. If any prince can guess it correctly, Ruoli will marry him and serve him wholeheartedly until the day we grow old. Hearing this, the 3 princes had different expressions on their faces. However, it was true that they were all shocked. They really didn't know about this before. Perhaps even their father didn't know about it. Also, this was too fast. Didn't they say that relationships needed to be nurtured? Yet, they had only met for the first time and only exchanged a few words with each other, and she had already laid down the rules. Whoever could guess which pet beast of Princess Ruoli was, she would marry that person. Straightforward enough. However, this didn't seem too difficult. After all, pet beasts and their owners shared a blood contract. Any beast appraiser will be able to identify their pet beasts in no time at all. Hence, this wasn't a difficult task at all. Could it be that it would depend on who spoke first? And this was a question to be answered first? The 3 princes weren't stupid. The more simple it seemed, the more complicated it might be. There was a high chance that there was a trap in this. The 3 princes turned to look at the beast appraisers they had invited. Beast appraisers were crucial in this segment. Among them, the eldest prince, Feng Ziong, felt the most helpless. He was burning with rage because the state preceptor wasn't around. If he was here, his chances of winning would definitely be the highest. But now, only Appraiser Yin was left. Although Appraiser Yin wasn't bad, he was still just one person. Feng Ziong glared at his third brother, Feng Ziqian, his face filled with anger. It was all because of that senior Shu whom Feng Ziqian had invited. If it weren't for him, he wouldn't be in such a passive position. On second thought, with that senior Shu around, wouldn't his third brother's chances of winning be much higher? Chapter 518. How could the second prince, Feng Zishan, not think of what the first prince, Feng Ziong, could think of? Feng Zishan's expression darkened. Who would have thought that Princess Ruoli of Thousand Island Country would be so direct? Didn't this mean that his previous efforts were all for naught? In the end, the most crucial part was the beast appraisal. The problem now was that his third brother, Feng Ziqian, clearly had the upper hand. The person she invited was of a high status. Feng Zishan didn't know how capable Senior Shu was, but he was certain that he was more capable than the other rank 4 beast appraisers here. Then, Feng Zishan turned to the 2 rank 4 beast appraisers he invited. Noticing Feng Zishan's gaze, they whispered, "Don't worry, Your Highness. We'll do our best." Feng Zishan could only nod. What else could he say at a time like this? Do your best. Meanwhile, Princess Ruoli had already ordered for the cloth covering the 3 deaf people to be removed. In an instant, 3 specially made cages appeared. Each cage was over 3 meters tall and was extremely large. Runes were carved on the cages to suppress pet beasts. When the crowd saw the pet beasts in the cages, they were dumbfounded. How could this be? Feng Ziong couldn't help but ask. He was indeed shocked, because the pet beasts in the cages were 3 chi dragons. Chi dragons had 4 legs and a long body. They had no horns on their heads, long tails, and strong physiques. They were dragon beasts native to Thousand Island Country, just like the Jade Dragons of Jade Dragon Kingdom. The problem was, other than some differences in color and details, these 3 Chi dragons looked exactly the same. It was as if they were made from the same mold. To be honest, the hornless dragon was definitely a rare beast. Even among the dragon beasts, it was a rare breed. Ordinary people might not be able to recognize and appraise it. But who were the beast appraisers here? They were all official rank 4 beast appraisers, experienced and knowledgeable. How could they not recognize Chi dragons? Therefore, it was not a problem for them to identify the hornless dragon. The real problem was to determine which of the 3 almost identical hornless dragons was Princess Ruoli's pet beast. This was indeed a little difficult. Of course, it was only a difficult task. It wasn't impossible. A rank 4 beast appraiser was no joke. Every single one of the rank 4 beast appraisers present had several methods to determine the blood contract relationship between a beast appraiser and a beast appraiser. The first to lose his cool was Appraiser Yin. He only had Appraiser Yin to help him, so he had to make haste. He stood up and said, "Appraiser Yin, please take a look." Appraiser Yin knew he couldn't refuse, so he stood up as well. Feng Zishan knew now was not the time to be modest, so he immediately invited the 2 beast appraisers behind him to examine the beast. Feng Ziqian glanced at Lin Jin and Mr. Storyteller, but they didn't seem to have any intention of getting up to go over. This made Feng Ziqian a little anxious. Appraiser Lin, aren't you going to take a look?" Feng Zishan whispered. Lin Jin smiled and turned to glance at Xiao Shu Lu. "Senior Shu, go take a look." Shu Xiao Lu did not move. He shook his head and said, "I'm only here to attend the banquet. I didn't say I'm going to evaluate beasts." From the looks of it, Shu Xiao Lu did not plan to enter the battlefield. Lin Jin knew what she was thinking. Given her status, if she were to compete with these juniors, she might become a laughingstock. Although Xiao Lu had a carefree personality and didn't care much about rules, she still took things like this seriously. Lin Jin nodded before getting up and heading over. In reality, everyone was secretly paying attention to Shu Xiao Lu's situation. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they realized that Senior Shu was not going to appraise the beast, except for Feng Ziqian. Feng Zishan was so excited that his fingers were trembling. Indeed, it is as I expected. With the status of this senior, he shouldn't be competing with the juniors. I knew it. This is great. With this, our chances of winning are much higher. He now had 2 rank 4 beast appraisers helping him, while Feng Ziong and Feng Ziqian were all alone. The one Feng Ziqian invited was so young that Feng Zishan had heard of him before. His name was Lin Jin, and he had just become a rank 4 beast appraiser not too long ago. Everyone knew that beast appraisals relied on experience and accumulation. Hence, Feng Zishan's instincts told him that Lin Jin was no match for the 2 veteran beast appraisers he had invited. The rank 4 beast appraisers stood around the cages and observed them from a close distance. They thought they would have an answer soon, but after a while, all four rank 4 beast appraisers, including Lin Jin, were stunned. No one said a word. This made the three princes extremely anxious. Appraiser Yin, is there a result? Feng Xiong couldn't resist asking. Appraiser Yin wore an odd expression. With a hint of uncertainty, he shook his head. Feng Zishan was overjoyed. But when he asked the 2 beast appraisers he had invited, he realized that they were shaking their heads in silence, just like Appraiser Yin. Feng Zishan was stunned as well. What was going on? Did they fail to appraise the beast? That shouldn't be the case. These people were all rank 4 beast appraisers. How could they fail to appraise the beast? Feng Ziqian turned to Lin Jin as well to find him deep in thought with his head lowered. All right, I'll stop asking. Feng Ziqian understood that something was amiss, so he gathered his courage and turned to look at Xu Xiaolu. He saw that the latter was also looking at the hornless dragon beasts in the cages with interest, a hint of a smile on his lips. Unconvinced, Appraiser Yin and the others tried to appraise the beasts again, but Lin Jin didn't. He returned to his seat and sat down. Unable to resist, Feng Ziqian asked, "Is something wrong? I know it now. Is it because none of these 3 beasts have a blood contract reaction?" Lin Jin shook his head before whispering to Feng Ziqian, "You're wrong. It's not that there isn't a blood contract reaction. It's that all 3 hornless dragons have a blood contract reaction. The so-called blood contract reaction referred to the blood contract between the beast and Princess Ruoli. All 3 hornless dragons had a connection? How is that possible?" Feng Ziqian understood why the rank 4 beast appraisers reacted this way. They must have noticed this as well. But the problem was it was impossible. Lin Jin pondered for a moment before suddenly mumbling to himself, "Nothing is impossible in this world." The corners of his lips curled up as he whispered into Feng Ziqian's ear. Feng Ziqian had a strange expression on his face as he repeatedly asked Lin Jin for confirmation. After receiving Lin Jin's affirmation, Feng Ziqian hesitated for a long time before finally gritting his teeth and getting up. "Princess Ruoli, I'm sorry, but the results are out." When Feng Ziqian spoke, his 2 brothers were startled. They thought Senior Shu was giving Feng Ziqian advice. But when they noticed that Senior Shu hadn't said a word since the beginning and only appraiser Lin Jin participated in the appraisal, they heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 519. These 3 hornless dragons are so strange that each of them has the aura of Princess Ruoli's blood contract with them. There must be some kind of concealment spell, so there must be a mix of the real and fake auras. Even the other rank 4 beast appraisers can't tell. So how could Lin Jin? He must have done it on purpose, Feng Zishan concluded. Just like Feng Xiong, Feng Zishan had learned about the 3 hornless dragons from the rank 4 beast appraisers they had hired. Feng Zishan had always been quick-witted, so he knew that this was probably a test Princess Ruoli had given them. Using some kind of spell to fake the power of a blood contract to confuse the public, we can only judge from other aspects. The 3 hornless dragons look almost the same except for some details and colors. Yes, one of them must be Princess Ruoli's favorite color. That's what she's trying to test us on. Feng Zishan's mind raced. Noticing Princess Ruoli's attire and color scheme, his eyes lit up. He stood up and said, "Princess Ruoli, Zishan knows that the hornless dragon is your pet beast." The 2 rank 4 beast appraisers behind Feng Zishan were stunned. "Second prince, what are you trying to do?" "I don't know anything, so how did you know?" The 2 of them wanted to stop Feng Zishan, but at this time, Feng Zishan had already stepped out and rushed down before Feng Ziqian. Feng Xiong was the most depressed of all. Seeing that his 2 younger brothers had come to a conclusion, he was so anxious that sweat beaded on his forehead. "Appraiser Yin, hurry up and give me a definite answer. I can't wait any longer," Feng Xiong said anxiously. Being able to marry Princess Ruoli was very important to him, not only because he could obtain the support of the Thousand Island Nation and the favor of his imperial father, but also because Princess Ruoli's voice and figure were impeccable. To be able to marry such a peerless beauty was also a very satisfying thing. Hence, Feng Xiong didn't want to lose, nor could he. Appraiser Yin looked troubled. "Your Highness, I really can't tell the difference in such a short amount of time. Not just me, but the other beast appraisers as well. Then why did they all come to a conclusion? Feng Ziong looked incredulous. This? Appraiser Yin mused. How would I know? After some thought, he said, maybe they're trying to get the upper hand by guessing. What do you mean? Feng Ziong was taken aback. First prince, you've also seen it just now. At first, the second prince didn't intend to speak. However, when he saw the third prince stand up and speak, he couldn't hold it in any longer. I think the second prince is unwilling to be outdone, so he decided to take the risk. After all, if he goes up and points at any one of them, he has a 30% chance of getting the right one. If he doesn't go, he'll have no chance at all. Needless to say, Appraiser Yan's analysis made sense. The Crown Prince, Feng Ziong, immediately came to a realization. Yes, that must be it. Second brother has always been cunning. He must be thinking this way. No, I can't fall behind. After Feng Ziong understood, he immediately got up and rushed over. At this moment, the three princes walked to Princess Ruoli one after another. This scene was really rare and very wonderful. Princess Ruoli didn't speak. She just smiled and looked at the three princes. Feng Ziong was the first to speak. His voice was loud. He pointed at a random hornless dragon and said, Princess Ruoli, this is your blood-packed beast. The other two aren't. This point was firm and decisive, without the slightest bit of hesitation. He wanted to seize this opportunity. Feng Ziong knew that if it was just a random guess, the first to speak would have the highest chance of success, so he had to be the first to speak. Strictly speaking, a 30% chance wasn't small. Feng Zishan was stunned. He didn't expect his eldest brother to be smart this time. At first, Feng Zishan's expression changed, but when he saw the hornless dragon Feng Ziong pointed at, he was relieved. The color of this hornless dragon was different from the dress Princess Ruoli was wearing today. According to Feng Zishan's theory, this one definitely wasn't the hornless dragon. Sure enough, Princess Ruoli shook her head. The first prince is wrong. Wrong? Feng Ziong's heart sank. He thought to himself that he was unlucky. Sure enough, a 30% chance was too small. Feng Zishan was afraid that his third brother Feng Ziqian would beat him to it, so he immediately pointed at the hornless dragon in the middle and said, Princess Ruoli, this one is the hornless dragon, the others aren't. Feng Zishan, who was originally full of confidence, also stiffened when he saw Princess Ruoli shake her head. He's wrong too. After Princess Ruoli finished speaking, Feng Ziong and Feng Zishan's expressions darkened. There was only one hornless dragon left. They could even guess it with their eyes closed. Third brother's luck is too good. Damn it, why was I so anxious just now? Both of them had the same thought. There was no need to mention the unwillingness in their hearts. Just when both of them thought that their third brother would definitely point to the last hornless dragon, they saw Feng Ziqian say, Princess Ruoli, if I'm not mistaken, these three hornless dragons are your blood-packed beast, right? What? Feng Ziong and Feng Zishan were stunned at first. Then they were overjoyed. Had their third brother been kicked in the head by a donkey? How could he mess up a sure-win situation? Anyone with a little common sense would know that while there were indeed ways to form a blood pact with two beasts, there was no such thing as forming a blood pact with three beasts. This was common sense. Just like how fish couldn't survive on land, they would take off their clothes in hot weather and use an umbrella in the rain. Although they didn't know why Feng Ziqian messed up on purpose, it was a good thing for Feng Ziong and Feng Zishan. With this, they still had a chance. Unbeknownst to them, after Feng Ziqian finished speaking, Princess Ruoli's eyes glinted with surprise and delight. Then, she said something that left everyone dumbfounded. How did His Highness figure out? Something wasn't right. Why did it feel like he got the answer right? Feng Ziqian was honest and didn't claim credit for himself. Princess Ruoli, I didn't figure out myself. It was my good friend, Appraiser Lin, who figured it out. It's not my doing. Feng Ziqian was being reasonable. He wasn't arrogant, nor would he exaggerate the truth. Princess Ruoli looked at Feng Ziqian again and found him the most pleasing to the eye among the three princes. He was the first to come up with a conclusion, but he waited until the other two brothers spoke first. Not only that, he didn't claim credit for it either. It was rare to see someone with such a mindset. "Your Highness, you are right," Princess Ruoli said. She didn't say anything else. There was no need to say anything because she had already said what she needed to say. As a woman of the imperial family, she was very clear about her future, especially when it came to marriage. It was impossible for her to make the decision herself. However, she was also an extremely intelligent woman. Since she had to marry one of the three people, she had to make the choice herself. Feng Ziqian was right. All three hornless dragons were her blood-contracted pet beasts. To her, only a handful of beast appraisers would be able to tell this. Most likely, the three princes would choose one each, so all she needed to do was to pick the one that caught her eye. In this regard, Princess Ruoli felt lucky. She had always thought that the third prince was a better choice. To her surprise, he actually got it right. This meant that the third prince had the support of an expert, and his future was limitless. Chapter 5:20. Things developed to this point. Not to mention Feng Ziyong and Feng Zishan. Even Feng Ziqian himself did not expect that he would win. Just now, Princess Ruoli said that the third prince answered correctly, which had already determined the final result. To Lin Jin, this was definitely a formal diplomatic occasion. Things that had been agreed upon couldn't be changed. Moreover, the Thousand Island Nation's envoy had no intention of changing his mind. "Congratulations, Your Highness." Envoy Lu immediately bowed with a smile. Princess Ruoli had made her stance clear. If all went well, Sky Spiral Nation's third prince would marry Princess Ruoli and become the Thousand Island Nation's son-in-law. Of course, he should congratulate him. Feng Ziqian felt like he had been struck by happiness. In contrast, Feng Ziyong and Feng Zishan's expressions were grim. They had planned for so long and put in so much effort only to end up benefiting someone else. They were indignant. But what else could they do? Feng Zishan was gritting his teeth in anger. There was one thing he couldn't understand, so he couldn't resist asking. Although I'm not an official beast appraiser, I still know the basics of beast appraising. How could there be someone in this world who could form a blood pact with three pet beasts at the same time? He was questioning it. Moreover, he had evidence to back up his claims. Indeed, there were ways to form a blood pact with two beasts in this world. It was said that there were quite a few of them. Some had serious drawbacks, while others were relatively mild. However, he had never heard of anyone forming a blood pact with three beasts. That was why Feng Zishan didn't hesitate to ask. He had the confidence, and he didn't understand this matter either. At this moment, he was eager to know the reason, because Feng Zishan had keenly noticed something more valuable. That was the method to form a blood pact with three beasts. If there was, and he could get his hands on it, he would definitely be able to win his father's favor. Considering how much his father doted on him, there was a high chance that he could become the crown prince. Feng Ziqian obviously didn't know how to answer Feng Zishan's question, so he turned to look at Lin Jin. The latter smiled and said, "It's true that the method to form a blood pact with three beasts hasn't been passed down in this world yet, but just because it hasn't been passed down doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Also, common sense isn't fixed. There will always be exceptions, just like Princess Ruoli's three hornless dragons." In fact, Lin Jin had already found out about the situation when he went down for the evaluation. Even a rank 5 beast appraiser couldn't compare to the Museum of Deadly Beasts behind Lin Jin. What even a rank 5 beast appraiser couldn't confirm was confirmed by the Museum of Deadly Beasts. For example, these three hornless dragons were Princess Ruoli's pet beasts. The Museum of Deadly Beasts gave the final verdict. Other than that, the Museum of Deadly Beasts also listed several methods to form a blood contract with the three beasts. The most valuable one was the official method to form a blood contract with the three beasts. However, this method was different from the perfect method provided for forming a blood contract with two beasts. The method provided by the Museum of Deadly Beasts this time had its drawbacks and side effects. Of course, even if that was the case, it was still extremely valuable. It could even be said to be a priceless item. Once such a technique was released, it would immediately shake the world. who knew how much blood would be shed because of this technique. But from Lin Jin's perspective, Princess Ruoli definitely wasn't using this method. She was using an unorthodox method, a technique, and a shortcut. The Museum of Deadly Beasts explanation was similar to what Lin Jin came up with based on his own experience. Hornless dragons were oviparous. Most of the time, one egg would give birth to one dragon. However, there were exceptions, and that was when one egg could give birth to multiple hatchlings. If there were 3 dragons in one egg, a secret method would be used to form a blood contract before hatching. Once the 3 dragons hatched, all 3 hornless dragons would become blood contract beasts. Princess Ruoli must have used this method. This was also confirmed by the Museum of Deadly Beasts appraisal results. Lin Jin knew that there would be doubts and questions about this, so he didn't plan on hiding it. Standing up, he explained the method of forming a blood contract with 3 dragons and 1 egg. As a rank 4 beast appraiser, his explanation was reasonable. After he was done, the rank 4 beast appraiser's eyes lit up and they nodded in agreement. I had the same guess, but I didn't expect it to be true. This is the only explanation. It's true that there's no way to form a blood contract with 3 beasts in this world, but a special case like the one appraiser Lin mentioned isn't a problem either. It also holds up to scrutiny. Although the rank 4 beast appraisers were currently working for their respective masters and were in a competitive relationship, they didn't differentiate between friend and foe when it came to beast appraising. What was right, and what was wrong. They had to learn from what was good and refute what was wrong. This was the code and morality of a beast appraiser. The 3 princes came to a realization. It wasn't hard to understand, but they had never thought of this method before. Appraiser Lin is so knowledgeable that I'm impressed. You're right. When I was young, my Thousand Island Nation's imperial preceptor personally conducted the blood contract ceremony. Ruoli only managed to get these 3 hornless dragons because she benefited from the ceremony. Princess Ruoli's words confirmed Lin Jin's speculation. Lin Jin smiled and saluted her before returning to his seat. He was done here and said what he needed to say. Now, all he had to do was eat and leave. Xu Xiaolu wasn't surprised by Lin Jin's speculation because she had noticed it too. She was just too lazy to point it out. She was here to join in on the fun, but she realized that there wasn't much fun to be had. Since the food was average and she didn't feel like eating, she secretly urged Lin Jin to leave. Fortunately, the appraisal segment was over and the banquet was coming to an end. Noticing that the sky was getting dark, Lin Jin thought about it and excused himself. The other beast appraisers probably didn't want to stay either, so they followed suit. Lin Jin breathed a sigh of relief. At least he and Xu Xiaolu wouldn't stand out too much. Outside the hall, Appraiser Yin and the other rank 4 beast appraisers had yet to leave. They were waiting respectfully for Xu Xiaolu and quickly bowed when they saw her. Xu Xiaolu merely snorted through her nostrils and said nothing else. She was so cold and arrogant. Lin Jin was helpless to do anything, but that was just how Xu Xiaolu was. She would pester you for an entire day if you got along with her, but if she didn't, she wouldn't even bother to talk to them. After sending the 3 beast appraisers away, Lin Jin and Xu Xiaolu walked side by side. Suddenly, Xu Xiaolu's voice turned into a female voice. Turning around, Lin Jin realized that she had transformed back into a woman dressed in red. Lin Jin was envious. This clone transformation technique was truly amazing. However, Xu Xiaolu was probably the only one in this world who could do this. Just then, Xu Xiaolu suddenly said, "Lin Jin, you have to be careful of that appraiser Yan from earlier." What? Stunned, Lin Jin glanced at Xu Xiaolu, confused as to why she would say that. Chapter 521. Lin Jin thought he had misheard. Xu Xiaolu continued, "There's something off about that appraiser Yan." This time, Lin Jin began to take her seriously. Xu Xiaolu was no ordinary person. She was an art spirit. To put it more bluntly, she was an art spirit with more than 500 years of cultivation. She was also an existence that surpassed rank 5 beast appraisers. Her experience, observation skills, and knowledge far surpassed Lin Jin's. Without the museum of deadly beasts, Lin Jin might be nothing compared to her. Hence, Lin Jin took Xu Xiaolu's stern warning very seriously. "Appraiser Yin, what's wrong with him?" Lin Jin asked. Xu Xiaolu smiled. With her red dress and snow-white skin, she had a unique aura under the night sky. "Intuition tells me that Appraiser Yin is hiding his strength. There's a mysterious energy fluctuation around him that even I can't see through. He's also been observing you and me." Xu Xiaolu did not seem to have said anything valuable, but since she did, she must have felt that something was wrong. Lin Jin didn't say a word as he began to ponder over this matter. Xu Xiaolu's senses surpassed his own, even surpassing most beasts with heightened senses. There was no doubt about this. Since she said that, she wouldn't be speaking without thinking. After some thought, Lin Jin couldn't help but recall something else. Who was at that place, that jar, in Peach Blossom Residence? It must be someone who had been here before. It couldn't be his disciples. With their age and experience, they wouldn't have been able to do something like that. Right, Tan Lin was here too, but Lin Jin couldn't possibly suspect her. If that was the case, someone who could do something like that without being discovered must be quite capable. In that case, Lin Jin narrowed down his target. A rank 4 beast appraiser was definitely more capable than a rank 3 beast appraiser. Excluding the rank 3 beast appraiser, Appraiser Yin was one of the 2 rank 4 beast appraisers who visited. Lin Jin still remembered that it was Appraiser Yin and Appraiser Ouyang who came together to mediate between him and Appraiser Yang. After chatting for a long time, the 2 appraisers even said that they wanted to tour Peach Blossom Residence and explore the place. Now that she mentioned it, it was indeed suspicious. However, Appraiser Yin had always been nice to him. Ever since the rank 4 beast appraiser evaluation, he had been taking good care of him. But this could just be a facade. In any case, Lin Jin was starting to get suspicious after what Little Library said. However, suspicions were just suspicions. There was no evidence to prove that Appraiser Yin was the culprit, and it would be bad if he was mistaken. After all, no matter how he looked at it, Appraiser Yin had always treated him well and helped him in every aspect. If there was really something wrong with the other party, then this person was too terrifying. What he was after was probably unimaginable. Lin Jin knew Xiao Lu was reminding him. Thanks to Xiao Lu's presence, Lin Jin wouldn't have suspected Appraiser Yin. "Let's go drink. Didn't you say you were going to treat us?" Xu Xiaolu said. At this moment, they had already left the palace and arrived at Tianxin City. Although it was already dark, Heavenly Jade City was still bustling with activity. Lin Jin calculated the time. There were still about 2 hours left before the visitation hall opened. He could accompany Xu Xiaolu for a stroll and eat. And so, the 2 of them began strolling around the city. Some of the streets were brightly lit and stalls stood by the roadside. The sounds of people shouting and singing filled their ears, making the place lively. Xu Xiaolu didn't seem like an art spirit with 500 years of cultivation at all. Instead, she was behaving like a girl her age, interested in everything she saw and eager to buy it. Soon, she had a lot of items in her hands. Fans, candy figurines, and small trinkets. Lin Jin had paid for them all with his money. Fortunately, they weren't worth much. Lin Jin noticed that Xu Xiaolu was especially fond of paintings. As long as she saw something she liked, she would ask to buy it. Lin Jin figured that this must have something to do with her being an art spirit. Of course, this also reminded Lin Jin of something else. The unending nature landscape was also a painting, and one that contained a world of its own. If he brought Xu Xiaolu over to have a look, she would probably jump for joy, wouldn't she? This wasn't an urgent matter. Lin Jin and Xu Xiaolu sat across from each other in a restaurant. They ordered 2 jars of fine wine and a few dishes. Tasting the wine and dishes, he found this place to be more enjoyable than the banquets in the palace. The customers at the surrounding tables also noticed the man and woman. The man was handsome and confident while the woman was dressed in red. They were a perfect match, and everyone was envious of them. Jilu Country. Zhongzhou was a Tier 1 country that bordered Jade Dragon Kingdom. Decades ago, both countries had a long war, and both countries lost more than 100,000 people at the border. Because of this, Both countries had always been hostile toward each other and never had any contact. Currently, outside Yin Pass, the border between the two countries, a figure was flying swiftly. This person could fly in the air without relying on any external objects. If anyone were to see this, they would be astounded. This person was flying without making a sound. In the darkness of the night, no one noticed him. On the road in front of this person, several horses were galloping wildly. It seemed like this person was secretly tailing them. The horses in front didn't stop to rest at all. They crossed the plains and entered Julu Pass before stopping to rest at a certain village in Julu's territory. F***CK. This operation was so unlucky. Not only did we fail, we even lost a few brothers. It's all thanks to our quick wits that we managed to escape. In a yard of a house, a few people were eating while two corpses lay on the ground next to them. It was the owner of this house. This group of people killed as soon as they entered and rested in the other party's house. The man who spoke had a fierce expression on his face. He invoked a spell, and a large python slithered out of his neck. There were several wounds on the python's body, clearly injured. The python slithered around and swallowed one of the corpses on the ground. Across from a man was an injured person. This person had lost an arm, and it was wrapped in cloth. Blood was still seeping out of the wound. He looked pitiful, but his expression was ferocious. One look, and anyone could tell that he wasn't a kind soul. This isn't over. Anyone who dares to provoke the Demonic Appraisal Association must die, no matter who they are. There was a chill in the voice. Perhaps it was because of the wound. The man's lips twitched, and he sucked in a breath of pain. Finally, he started cursing. Another person who had just finished feeding the horses came over and sat down. We've encountered an expert this time. We'll report this to Elder Yi when we get back. After all, Elder Yi was the one who arranged for us to be spied on in Maple City. At the mention of the mission, the three of them didn't look too happy. At first, he thought it was just a simple mission to keep an eye on a mansion in Maple City of the Jade Dragon Kingdom. He didn't expect to be discovered on his first day. She was a peerlessly beautiful woman, but this woman was too terrifying. There were 5 of them, and 2 of them died on the spot. The remaining 3 only managed to escape with a broken arm. As soon as they escaped, the 3 of them fled without hesitation all the way to Julu's territory. This time, the messenger bird said that Elder Yi is gathering his subordinates to go to Julu country. It should be a big operation. Let's go and tell Elder Yi about this. What to do next will be up to Elder Yi. After one person finished speaking, the other 2 nodded in agreement. However, the 3 of them didn't know that at the top of a tree not far away, a person was standing under the cover of the night. This graceful figure was none other than Shonger, who had been pursuing them all the way from Maple City. Chapter 522. For the past few days, Shonger had been following Lin Jin's instructions to guard Maple City while staying vigilant. Sure enough, someone was spying on them. Shonger made her move, but she didn't kill them all. Instead, she deliberately let the other 3 escape. With Shonger's capabilities, if she didn't go easy on them, they wouldn't have been able to escape. This was called casting a long line to catch a big fish. Shonger overheard the conversation between the 3 people in the yard and was elated. So Elder Yi is behind these people. That's even better. They're Master Lin's enemies, so I'll use this chance to wipe them all out in one fell swoop. Shonger remained calm and waited for half the night. When the 3 people were done resting, they immediately got up and continued on their way. Shonger followed closely behind them. She had been bored for the past few days, so how could she let this opportunity slip by? It would be best if she could go straight to the root of the problem and wipe out the entire Demonic Appraisal Association. With Shonger's current cultivation level, her object manipulation had been thoroughly refined, and she had created her own flying technique. Forget riding a horse. Shonger could even catch up to them if they rode on an eagle. It had to be said that the 3 of them had great stamina, and the horses they were riding on were decent mounts. In fact, all their pet beasts were rank 3, and they had cultivated the Beastkin Scroll. By hiding beasts in their bodies, they could cause a bloodbath no matter where they went. However, they were unlucky to have encountered Shonger. That was why they were beaten up so badly. One day later, the trio had entered deep into Julu country's hinterland. Shang'er followed them all the way until they arrived at a mountain villa. Seeing the three people sneaking into the villa and not coming out again, Shang'er knew that this must be one of the Demonic Appraisal Association's bases. When the sky turned dark, Shang'er didn't hesitate and charged in. The experts from the Demonic Appraisal Association were no match for Shang'er in this sudden ambush. Quite a few of them died in just a few exchanges, including the three people who managed to escape earlier. They all died under Shang'er's sword. Using the object manipulation technique to control a sharp sword and slash through space had now become Shang'er's favorite thing to do. It was like the legendary flying sword of the immortals, elegant and unrestrained. With just a single technique, even if the opponent was 300 meters away, she would be able to instantly kill them. Since there was no need to get close to Shang'er, some of the demonic appraiser's skills were useless against her. Even if she managed to destroy Shang'er's sword, but she had a few spare ones. In no time at all the demonic appraisers and their pet beasts in the villa were slaughtered. After confirming that it was safe, Shang'er entered to investigate. She wanted to find a few people alive to interrogate. As a result, she found a man covered with scars in a secret room of the villa. The man was unconscious and had been chained to a large iron pillar. When Shang'er found him, he was already half dead. When Shang'er saw the man's blood-stained, tattered clothes and the four-ringed beast emblem on his sleeve, she knew that he was an official beast appraiser. Recalling how he was tortured by the Demonic Appraisal Association, he must be an enemy of the association, an enemy of an enemy. Even if he wasn't a friend, she couldn't leave him in this place. Who knew if the other members of the Demonic Appraisal Association would return? Also, Shang'er didn't seem to see the Elder Yi the three mentioned. It took a lot of effort to get this person down from the iron pillar. Even with Shang'er's cultivation, it was still very difficult to cut open the iron hoop. It was unknown what kind of metal the iron hoop was made of, but it was extremely hard. Moreover, it had a special magic power that could suppress Shang'er's power. Shang'er didn't want to touch them. After saving the man, she realized that the man's injuries were more severe than she imagined. One of the man's arms seemed to have been sucked dry by something. Only half of the flesh was left, and the bones could be seen in several places. Shang'er had also learned Lin Jin's pulse-seeking technique. She took out her needles and used needle manipulation to stitch up the man's wounds. Otherwise, this man wouldn't last long if she left him like this. Besides, Shang'er had been learning beast appraising from Lin Jin for a long time. Although she hadn't officially passed the beast appraiser examination, her abilities were on par with an official appraiser. Judging by the horrifying wound on the man's arm, she could tell that someone had forcefully extracted the man's pet beast. They had even severed their blood contract. The Demonic Appraisal Association's methods were truly vicious and bizarre. Most beast appraisers wouldn't have known how to do this. This person was unconscious, but after some simple treatment by Shang'er, his life was saved. With the art of controlling objects, Shang'er easily brought this person to a safe place. It was an abandoned mountain god temple. This place was located deep in the mountains and was quite a distance away from the manor. The Demonic Appraisal Association definitely wouldn't be able to find this place. However, Shang'er soon realized that she was being held back. Since the man was unconscious, Shang'er couldn't just leave like that. There were many ferocious beasts lurking in the mountains, and if she stayed away for too long, this man would surely become food for the beasts. Fortunately, with Shang'er's pulse-seeking technique, the man finally regained consciousness after an entire day of unconsciousness. It's great that you're awake. Shang'er was elated. She planned to return to the manor to take a look. That place must be one of the Demonic Appraisal Association strongholds. Since she hadn't seen Elder Yi, she might just be able to catch him the next time she visited. After waking up, Yang Ming felt pain all over his body. It was a heart-wrenching pain, and his mind was a mess. It took him a long time to recall what happened. He remembered. At the academy, he received a letter from his younger sister, saying that his mother was gravely ill and that he had to return home immediately. Being a filial son, Yang Ming decided to leave immediately. Of course, Yang Ming was aware of the academy's rules. Coincidentally, he ran into a rank 4 beast appraiser he was familiar with. After hearing about the situation, the man told Yang Ming to leave first and that he would inform the academy on his behalf. Yang Ming didn't think too much about it. Out of yearning for his mother, he rushed back to Julu country that very night. Little did he expect to be ambushed upon his return. Despite being a rank 4 beast appraiser, Yang Ming was no match for an ambush. First, he breathed in the poisonous gas. Then his pet beast was restrained by the soul-hauling net and was captured alive. After that, he was subjected to inhumane torture. Since the enemy didn't kill him, they must be plotting something. Later, Yang Ming found out that they were after the Downlord counting token in his possession. Almost as soon as the enemy revealed their intentions, Yang Ming knew that he had fallen into a trap, and he had a rough idea who was behind this. Yang Ming was a smart person. This time, he was just a little careless because he missed his mother. When he thought about it carefully, he knew that the whole thing should be led by the nose. Unfortunately, he realized it too late. The other party tortured him in every possible way, but Yang Ming didn't relent. He didn't tell them the location of the wooden tablet. Before he left, he had left this token somewhere in Tianjin Royal City, but he didn't bring it with him. He knew very well that if he revealed the location of the token, he would surely die. And if he died, he would never be able to exact his revenge. Chapter 523. They use Yang Ming's family to threaten him. Yang Ming knew very well that based on these people's behavior, his family would have met with misfortune long ago. Hence, he couldn't possibly speak. These people used sorcery to forcefully separate Yang Ming's pet beast from his body and even sever his blood contract. With that, the heavily injured Yang Ming was no different from a cripple. Later, Yang Ming fainted. He thought he was dead for sure, but when he woke up, he realized that he had been saved. However, this could also be a ploy by the other party. Hence, after Yang Ming woke up, he remained silent and continued to observe. Shang'er didn't know any of this. She asked for the other party's name, but when she saw the other party's silence, she wondered if there was something wrong with his brain. Shang'er didn't think too much about it. Since this person was awake, things would be easier. Shang'er went out for a while and returned with a fierce mountain tiger. This tiger was quite unlucky. It was sleeping in the cave when it felt a strong gust of wind sweeping it up and landing outside the mountain god temple, causing it to see stars. It got up and was about to unleash its dominance as the king of the mountain and roar. However, a slap landed on its face, and the tiger immediately became obedient. On the other side, Shang'er retracted her palm and stared at the ferocious tiger. I can see that you have a bit of spirituality, so you should have developed some intelligence. You belong to the early stages of cultivation, so consider yourself lucky. Help me look after the person inside, and don't let the other beasts hurt him. If anything happens, I will skin you alive. Shang'er used a gentle tone to speak fiercely. The tiger could obviously understand her. It was trembling in fear, thinking how unlucky it was. It was sleeping in the cave, so how could it expect trouble to fall from the sky? It could smell the terrifying demonic energy from the woman in front of it. She might be small in size, but if they really fought, she could probably skin alive in an instant. Hence, the tiger quickly nodded in fear. I know cultivation isn't easy. If you do this well, and I'm in a good mood, I might teach you some basic skills. If you don't, I'll use your bones to make wine. After saying that, Shang'er immediately flew away like a fairy. The big tiger looked at it enviously. It immediately reacted and thought to itself that this was an opportunity. At that moment, it did not feel that it was unlucky. First, it poked its head into the mountain god temple to take a look and found a half-dead person lying on the ground, looking at it. The big tiger licked its lips, walked in, and lay at the side. In fact, Yang Ming had heard everything that happened outside. He was surprised to see the tiger enter, but as a rank 4 beast appraiser, he had seen the world. This tiger was indeed ferocious, and by the looks of it, it was already a rank 2 beast. Among the wild beasts without a master, it was considered pretty good. Most importantly, this tiger already had spiritual intelligence. It was obvious that it was exploring the path of cultivation. This was not strange. The world was vast, and there were many deep mountains. There were actually many ferocious beasts like this. But what surprised Yang Ming was that the woman's means were actually so good. It only took a moment to go and return, and she actually caught such a fierce tiger. Furthermore, he didn't even need a blood contract to make the other party listen to him. This method was incredible. After thinking about it carefully, Yang Ming speculated that this woman should not be the group of people who harmed him, but he still needed to observe her. On the other hand, Shang'er was a little disappointed to return to the manor after a day. The manor had already been vacated. Forget the people, even the corpses were gone. The manor had clearly been cleaned up, and the bloodstains were wiped clean. It seemed like the people from the Demonic Appraisal Association were very decisive. They abandoned the place as soon as they realized it was attacked and left without a trace. Shang'er sighed. She had planned to capture Elder Yi and interrogate him, but it seemed like that wasn't going to work. I'm still too inexperienced. Shang'er was frustrated. Of course, she was only observing from afar and didn't enter the manor. At most, she could control a sharp sword and pass through the manor with her demonic aura. Shang'er had been at a disadvantage against her enemies before, so she had learned to be smart. If someone set up a trap here, she would be at a great disadvantage if she barged in recklessly. Shang'er didn't return to the mountain god temple right away. Instead, she took a detour outside, afraid that someone would follow her. When she returned, the big tiger immediately came up to her with a fawning expression. Inside, Yang Ming was leaning against a pillar as he watched Shang'er walk in. "Who are you?" Yang Ming asked. He could tell that this woman wasn't one of those people. "Your savior," Shang'er replied coldly. She had failed to achieve her goal and lost track of the enemy. Now that she had lost track of the enemy, she would have to return to Maple City and continue waiting. This obviously pissed her off. She really wanted to look for Lin Jin, but now she felt like this reason wasn't convincing enough. Meanwhile, Yang Ming had figured out many things. Still, he was a smart man, or else he wouldn't have become a rank 4 beast appraiser. "Yang Ming thanks you for saving my life. I hope you can help me with one more thing," Yang Ming said with a salute. However, Shang'er ignored him. Flicking her sleeve, she said, "I'm busy." Yang Ming was humiliated, but he continued, "Please escort me back to Tianxian City. Once this is done, I will repay your kindness. This is very important to me." He had to return. Firstly, he had left the token counter in one of Tianxian City's residences. Secondly, he had a rough idea of who was trying to harm him, so he had to report this to the academy. "Why are you so annoying?" I said I'm not. Shang'er was in a bad mood, so she blurted out instinctively. But halfway through her sentence, she suddenly realized something. "Wait, where did you say you're going?" "Tianxian City." Shang'er was overjoyed. "Wasn't Master Lin at Tianxian City? Perfect. I can use this as an excuse to go there. This way, Master Lin won't blame me." Shang'er nodded. "Let's go now." Yang Ming was speechless. Shang'er was swift and decisive. Once she said she was leaving, she wouldn't waste a single second. With a flick of her sleeve, a gust of black wind gushed out, sweeping Yang Ming and the big tiger into the air. The reason why she brought the big tiger along was because Shang'er promised to teach it some cultivation methods. In addition, arranging for the big tiger to protect this person named Yang Ming was also a good idea. His pet beast had been forcefully stripped away, and his foundation was damaged. Even Shang'er could see that the possibility of this person forming a blood contract with another pet beast was very small. It was almost impossible. So, getting a tiger to follow him was a good deed. Not long after Shang'er left with the big tiger and Yang Ming, a group of people arrived outside the mountain god temple. Some people controlled a beast to enter the temple and found no one. Then a group of people rushed in. The ones leading the group were Elder Yi and Zhou Wang. In addition, there were a few strange-looking experts. They just left. Did they notice something? Maybe. We didn't do a good job this time. Yesterday, I sent a letter to the Black Emissary to apologize. All of you are dismissed for now and wait for further instructions. After Elder Yi finished speaking, the others nodded and immediately left. Only Zhou Wang and Elder Yi were left. The two looked at each other. The former said, "Elder Yi, who saved Yangming?" Elder Yi shook his head. "It's hard to say now. The other party is very skilled. We still need Master Black Emissary to decide. Zhou Wang, let's go back together to apologize. I hope that Master Black Emissary will forgive us on account of our efforts." After that, the two left immediately. Chapter 524. Heavenly Jade City. Only 2 days had passed since the banquet for the Thousand Island Nations envoy. On this day, a bird flew into Heavenly Jade Academy. Bird messenger was a method used by many people. The shops on the street had birds that were specially used as messenger birds for sale. Of course, the price varied according to the grade of the birds. The best ones were quite expensive. The bird landed swiftly at the residence of a rank 4 beast appraiser. Then, someone grabbed the bird and removed the letter from its leg. The man opened it and frowned. Useless! With a light flick of his hand, the letter was burnt to a crisp by a ball of flames. Wait a minute. Since the wooden token isn't with Yangming, he must have hidden it somewhere. I've searched his residence in Heavenly Jade City, but I didn't find anything. Could it be that he has another place to stay? That must be it. I didn't expect Yangming to be so cunning. The man mumbled to himself. Now that Yangming has been rescued by a mysterious person, he will surely return. Looks like I can't use this identity anymore. What a pity. The man shook his head again. Then, he walked out and gathered his students. I have something to attend to today. You all just have to study hard here. Yes. The students didn't dare to ask any more questions. They all nodded in response. After taking some of his treasured items with him, the man left the academy silently and disappeared without a trace. Early the next morning, Shang'er led Yangming to the entrance of Heavenly Jade Academy. Coincidentally, some students who were passing by recognized Yangming at first glance. Teacher Yangming is back. The news immediately spread throughout Heavenly Jade Academy. By the time Lin Jin received the news, it was already late. By the time he arrived at the main hall, he noticed that most of the teachers in the academy were already there. At the sight of Lin Jin, the teachers greeted him. Lin Jin's status was no longer what it used to be. Everyone now knew that he shared a close relationship with Senior Shu. Based on this fact alone, who wouldn't treat Lin Jin with the utmost respect? Even Mr. Zhong was being courteous to Lin Jin. Of course, everyone knew that this was all because of Senior Shu. Lin Jin returned the greeting. Then, he entered the main hall and spotted Shang'er at first glance. It couldn't be helped. No matter where she went, Shang'er would always be the most eye-catching one. Her incomparable temperament coupled with her beautiful and flirtatious appearance. As long as one wasn't blind, she would be the first person anyone would look at, regardless of whether they were male or female. Lin Jin was shocked to see Shang'er here. He didn't expect this. Wasn't Shang'er supposed to be at Maple City? Why was she at Heavenly Jade Academy? At the sight of Lin Jin, Shang'er's eyes lit up and she immediately bowed. Greetings, Master Lin. Many people in the main hall gaped. They had arrived early, so they knew this girl was Yangming's savior, but they didn't expect her to be Yang was Lin's student. Of course, despite Shang'er's excellent concealment skills, there were still quite a number of beast appraisers who could tell that she was a monster. However, they were all virtuous and forgiving people, so even if they knew that Shang'er was a monster, as long as she didn't do anything evil, they wouldn't treat her differently. The more capable a person was, the more lenient they would be toward others. Although Shang'er was a demon, she had her own spiritual qi. Her cultivation method was upright and righteous, without the slightest bit of evil. Moreover, Teacher Yangming had personally admitted that it was this Miss Shang'er who had saved him. Therefore, the entire academy was extremely grateful to Shang'er without any prejudice. Soon, Lin Jin figured out what was going on. Because he saw Yangming. Although Yangming looked pitiful, Lin Jin soon understood what was going on. Teacher Lin Jin, Teacher Yangming has clarified that he had no idea about your attack that day. Also, he was tricked into returning to Jiulu country and almost lost his life. Fortunately, Miss Shang'er stood up for him, Zhong Zifeng said. His current understanding of the situation was rather comprehensive. It turned out that teacher Yang Ming had returned in a hurry because his mother was gravely ill that night. However, he told appraiser Yin about it, and the latter agreed to help him clear things up with the academy. Hence, Yang Ming didn't run away to avoid punishment after attacking Lin Jin. Moreover, someone had examined his injuries, so it was true. The main point here was appraiser Yin. Yang Ming had told appraiser Yin about this before he left, but appraiser Yin didn't mention a word about it. "Where's appraiser Yin?" Lin Jin asked. This was no small matter. Due to Xu Xiao Lu's warning, Lin Jin had been on his guard against appraiser Yin for the past 2 days. However, he only had suspicions back then and had no proof. The past 2 days had been peaceful. "Appraiser Yin has gone missing," someone said. Sure enough, Lin Jin grew increasingly suspicious of appraiser Yin. After all, Xu Xiao Lu's observational skills were impressive. Given the current situation, appraiser Yan's suspicions were very high. After understanding the situation, appraiser Yin had left on his own yesterday afternoon. Based on what Shang'er said, the timing matched. Someone from the Demonic Appraisal Association must have tipped him off. The culprit knew that Yang Ming would return, so his actions would be exposed. Hence, he left early. This man was cautious and difficult to deal with. Zhong Zifeng suddenly said, "We still can't prove what appraiser Yin did. We need to find him and ask him about it." These words were reasonable and reasonable. After all, from the looks of it, appraiser Yin was at most guilty of not reporting the incident. That didn't mean anything. However, Lin Jin was now certain that there was something wrong with appraiser Yin after recalling everything that had happened. Perhaps appraiser Yin was the hidden black messenger of the Demonic Appraisal Association. Before this, Lin Jin had always assumed that Yang Ming was the culprit. However, the ambush proved that Yang Ming had nothing to do with this incident. Now that Shang'er mentioned that Yang Ming was from Jiulu, Lin Jin finally understood why Yang Ming had been targeting him. It was because he was from Jiulu. Jiulu and the Jade Dragon Kingdom had always been at odds with each other, and Lin Jin was well aware of this. Hence, it was only because he was a citizen of the Jade Dragon Kingdom that Yang Ming naturally disliked him. It was only reasonable for him to deliberately make things difficult for Lin Jin. Lin Jin could only blame himself for being careless. If he had found out about this earlier, his suspicions toward Yang Ming might have been dispelled. Now, Lin Jin was curious. If appraiser Yin was the black messenger of the Demonic Appraisal Association, he must have schemed against Yang Ming. But why? There must be a reason. Lin Jin didn't stand on ceremony and took the initiative to ask. Speaking of which, when Yang Ming saw Shang'er bowing to Lin Jin and addressing him as Master Lin, he was extremely shocked. To think that his savior was Lin Jin's disciple. One could only imagine how Yang Ming felt. However, on second thought, he didn't have any deep grudge against Lin Jin. It was just a small conflict. Moreover, Lin Jin's disciple was Yang Ming's savior. Yang Ming sighed inwardly and told the truth. Chapter 525. Before I left the academy, a good friend sent me an item. Yang Ming began his story. The assailants were after the Taoist Lord's token counting. There was no doubt about this. After hearing about the token counting, Lin Jin knew what was going on. It was because of this item again. Reed City's Qiao family was almost annihilated because of this. If it weren't for Lin Jin's help, the Qiao family would have been finished. And this time, it was because of the token counting. Hence, Lin Jin grasped the key point and asked, "Appraiser Yang Ming, may I ask if anyone found out about your token counting?" By someone, he was referring to appraiser Yin. Yang Ming nodded with a bitter smile. That's right. That night, I was trying to figure out the mystery of the token when appraiser Yin and appraiser Ouyang suddenly came to visit. I was careless and left the token on the table. That was probably when they found out about it, and that's how I got myself killed. Appraiser Ouyang was present as well. He tried to recall the incident, but didn't pay much attention to it. After all, he wouldn't have paid much attention even if he saw the token counting. Now that all the clues pointed to appraiser Yin, Lin Jin asked, "Has the token been taken?" "No." Appraiser Yang Ming shook his head. "I was being tortured, and I knew that if I handed the token over, I would surely die, so I didn't give it to them. Also, the token wasn't with me at the time. I left it behind. Oh no. Lin Jin's heart skipped a beat. At his words, Yang Ming came to a realization. Somewhere in Tianjin City. This family came from Jilu country too. They relied on their cooking skills to open a small noodle shop and run a small business. A few years ago, Yang Ming had a bowl of noodles from his hometown at this shop and found it to be very authentic. Hence, he became acquainted with the owner of the house. As time passed, they became good friends. Yang Ming would occasionally ask this family to look after his belongings. After all, no one knew about this place, so it was safe. It was the same this time. Before Yang Ming left, he left the token at this family's house, saying that he would retrieve it when he returned. Currently, the house was quiet. The family of 3 had died tragically in their house. Upon receiving this news, Yang Ming's eyes turned red and he wailed. Brother Ziyuan, I, Yang Ming, have harmed your family. Setting aside the infuriated Yang Ming, Lin Jin knew that the culprit was most likely Appraiser Yin and the Demonic Appraisal Association's henchman. The other party was smart, but his methods were too cruel. However, this was in line with the Demonic Appraisal Association style of doing things. From another perspective, the Demonic Appraisal Association had indeed infiltrated deep into Tianjin capital. Otherwise, they would not have been able to find such a well-hidden household. Given the current situation, the Demonic Appraisal Association was lagging behind every step of the way, which put them at a disadvantage. However, if one were to think about it, the Demonic Appraisal Association had suffered greatly this time as well. They never expected Yang Ming to be rescued by Shang Yu out of sheer coincidence. If Appraiser Yin was a pawn of the Demonic Appraisal Association, or even the elusive Black Envoy, they would be mad if they were in his shoes if he was discovered after such a long period of time. That was a good thing. Given the current situation, Lin Jin knew that he and the Demonic Appraisal Association were now irreconcilable enemies. However, he didn't know why the Demonic Appraisal Association was collecting visitor badges. Also, what was the value and purpose of those visitation hall badges that were scattered outside? Could it be that one could enter the visitation hall after obtaining them? Lin Jin thought that the possibility was high, but it might also be related to an item from 500 years ago. Also, the last time the visitation hall was opened, Lin Jin asked Black Crow, Madame Ghostchild, and the other villainous experts about the Gorfine twin ghosts who ambushed him before. Black Crow and Madame Ghostchild knew about the top 5 villainous experts. In terms of strength, the Gorfine twin ghosts were much stronger than Black Crow and Madame Ghostchild. They were well aware of this fact, which was why they were shocked when they learned that the Gorfine twin ghosts had ambushed Curator's disciple. However, when they heard that Appraiser Lin had killed them, they were even more shocked. Of course, they were overjoyed. Lin Jin also learned something else from them. The Gorfine twin ghost master was the legendary Ghost Cultivator. Lin Jin remembered now. Just like the insect cultivator who attacked him before, the Ghost Cultivator was also one of Taoist Lord's disciples. Legend had it that Taoist Lord had a disciple named Taoist Six Beasts. The Insect Cultivator and the Ghost Cultivator were 2 of them. This served as a reminder to Lin Jin. Not only did he have to be wary of the Black Emissary, but he also had to be wary of the legendary Ghost Cultivator. Although Black Crow and Madame Ghostchild said that the Ghost Cultivator was most likely dead, there were always exceptions. The Insect Cultivator was a good example. Moreover, cultivators who had lived for hundreds of years not only had terrifying pet beasts, but they also had powerful artifacts and artifacts. Lin Jin had gotten the immortal binding rope from the Insect Cultivator. The truth of his previous doubts was finally revealed. Yang Ming had suffered the greatest blow this time. Not only had his family been killed, but his good friend's family had also been annihilated. As for Yang Ming himself, he was severely injured and looked like a cripple. His pet beast had been forcefully taken away by the Demonic Appraisal Association using an evil technique. It was then separated from his physical body, so Yang Ming looked a little dispirited and lethargic. Fortunately, Mr. Zhong had hired the best doctor to treat him. However, this wasn't enough for Yang Ming. Lin Jin wasn't surprised when Yang Ming came looking for Lin Jin in private. Appraiser Lin, Yang Ming is here to thank you, and also to thank Miss Shang'er for saving my life, Yang Ming said sincerely. Lin Jin helped Yang Ming into the room and brewed him a pot of tea. Shang'er and Xiao Shu came out from the inner chamber. Xiao Shu was clearly curious about a monster cultivator like Shang'er. After getting to know her, he dragged her to a small room at the back for some reason. But this was good too. Lin Jin didn't have to worry about her because she wouldn't have to bother him anymore. TSK, so miserable. Xu Xiao Lu looked at Yang Ming from head to toe and said this. Yang Ming had obviously heard about what happened to Xiao Shu, so he didn't show any displeasure. Instead, he bowed respectfully at Xiao Shu. Greetings, Senior Shu. There's no need for that. You should just sit down and rest in your current state. Xiao Shu waved him off and sat down. Yang Ming insisted on bowing. Other than visiting Lin Jin and thanking Shang'er, he was also here to look for Xiao Shu. Yang Ming was now carrying a blood feud. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't give up when they encountered this kind of thing, let alone someone like Yang Ming. He wanted nothing more than to slaughter every single member of the Demonic Appraisal Association, especially Appraiser Yin. He had to find the man and interrogate him in person. If Appraiser Yin was really the culprit, Yang Ming would skin him alive and tear his bones apart. But strictly speaking, he didn't have the ability to do so. Even if Appraiser Yin came, Yang Ming would be the one dead. Hence, he came looking for Xiao Shu. Chapter 5:26. Perhaps only Xu Xiao Lu could help him in this world. This was also Mr. Zhong's suggestion to Yang Ming. In the beginning, when Mr. Zhong asked Yang Ming to come to Peach Blossom House to look for Senior Shu, Yang Ming didn't quite understand it. Later on, he realized that Lin Jin and Xu Xiao Lu were already so familiar and intimate. Forget the other beast appraisers in the academy. Even old Master Zhong Zifeng was envious of the relationship between the two of them. Recently, Senior Shu hadn't returned to the Beast Appraisal Hall. This made old Master Zhong feel empty, lonely, and cold. Perhaps only old Master Zhong himself knew how he felt about this. No one else knew about this, and Yang Ming wouldn't think about it in any other way. All he could think about now was how to recover his strength and take revenge. Although the Rank 2 Big Tiger was by his side during this time, helping him travel and carrying him to wherever he wanted to go, Yang Ming knew very well that this Rank 2 Big Tiger wouldn't help him take revenge. Hence, he came. Senior Shu, Yang Ming begs you to save me, no matter the cost. Yang Ming begged Xu Xiao Lu while kneeling. Lin Jin and Shang'er didn't know what to say, so they turned to Xu Xiao Lu. The latter was stunned for a moment before realization dawned on her. You came all the way here to look for me. You want me to think of a way to save you? It would be best if you could recover your strength so that you could take revenge. She was speaking Yang Ming's mind on his behalf. Yang Ming immediately lowered his head. Please grant my wish, Senior Shu. I can't do it. Xu Xiao Lu waved her hands. This was the answer she came up with after a few seconds of contemplation. Lin Jin was familiar with Xu Xiao Lu, so he knew that she said this because she had no other choice. She wasn't being perfunctory. However, to Yang Ming, her answer was too quick. Senior Shu, Yang Ming is now a cripple. The thief harmed my family and killed my good friend's entire family. This hatred is absolutely irreconcilable. However, I can't even take care of myself with this broken body, let alone take revenge. Mr. Zhong told me that if there is anyone in this world who can help me, it would be Senior Shu. I hope that Senior Shu can help me. If Yang Ming can take revenge, I am willing to be a slave for the rest of my life to repay this kindness. Having said that, she kowtowed. Xu Xiao Lu was starting to get annoyed. I told you I can't do it. I already told you I can't do it. Your bloodline has already been scattered. It's hard for your body to gather spiritual energy. Without spiritual energy, you can't convert spells into transcendence energy, so you won't be able to cast spells. Secondly, your pet beast was forcefully separated from you, damaging the foundation of your blood contract. Right now, you can't form a blood contract with a second pet beast, let alone me. Even if the Deluo Gene Xian mentioned in the book were here, he wouldn't be able to do it, unless you can reconstruct your body, but you have to know that this is impossible. Xu Xiaolu explained patiently. Naturally, she could tell that Yang Ming had no other way out, so he begged her sincerely. However, she wasn't perfunctory. What she said was the truth. Despite her seniority and strength, she was only a beast appraiser and an art spirit. She wasn't a holy doctor or a holy doctor. She really couldn't do anything to help Yang Ming's current situation. If she could help Yang Ming save his life, that wouldn't be a problem. But if she had to help him regain his strength, Xu Xiaolu was out of ideas. Yang Ming could tell that Xu Xiaolu wasn't being perfunctory. She was telling the truth. In fact, Yang Ming knew this would happen, but he only came here with the hope that it would work. Now, the merciless reality shattered his illusion. In an instant, Yang Ming's expression sank into despair. He wasn't the kind of person who could endure a blood feud and live like a coward. Rather than that, he would rather die. Suddenly, as if remembering something, Xu Xiaolu said, "I can't help you, but just because I can't doesn't mean others can't. Strictly speaking, you're asking the wrong person." This was a turn of events. To Yang Ming, this gave him a glimmer of hope. Like a drowning man grabbing onto a plank, it could save his life. "Senior Xu, please show me the way." Yang Ming looked excited. In his current state, as long as there was a path, he would take it no matter how difficult it was. "There, isn't that him?" Xu Xiaolu pointed at Lin Jin beside him. For a moment, the entire place fell silent. Yang Ming's eyes widened in disbelief while Lin Jin was stunned. Then, he understood what Xu Xiaolu was trying to say. No one could reconstruct a physical body, but when it came to sewing and mending, no one could compare to Lin Jin. That was what the pulse-seeking technique was for. Xu Xiaolu had been studying the pulse-seeking technique recently and was quite proficient in it. However, he was still lacking compared to Lin Jin. At this stage, only the pulse-seeking technique had the ability to mend a person's veins. Lin Jin's pulse-seeking technique was currently the strongest and had the highest realm, so Xu Xiaolu was right to point at Lin Jin. Other than that, Lin Jin had another unique ability. His blood contract beast was a rank 5 ghost blood beast. Not only could this creature kill enemies, but it could also strengthen the user's body, making it as tough as steel and indestructible. In fact, it could even mend a damaged body. If Lin Jin was willing to give some of his blood to Yang Ming, it would be much easier for the latter to mend his damaged veins. Hence, Xu Xiaolu wasn't exaggerating when she said Lin Jin could save Yang Ming. Although Yang Ming didn't know the reason, the existence of Senior Book would definitely not joke with him. Since she said so, it should not be wrong. Yang Ming immediately bowed to Lin Jin. "Appraiser Yang, you mustn't do this." Lin Jin quickly helped Yang Ming up. Initially, it wouldn't have been inappropriate if Lin Jin didn't help, but since Yang Ming had come knocking on his door, it wouldn't look good if he didn't help. More importantly, Yang Ming was now going to fight the Demonic Appraisal Association to the death. With this, Yang Ming would be considered a friend. Hence, Lin Jin was willing to help even if it meant that Lin Jin would be able to deal with the Demonic Appraisal Association. "Appraiser Yang Ming, I'll be frank. Although I have a way to save you, it's not guaranteed, and the process is extremely painful. I'll need to insert needles into your body to mend your veins bit by bit. If you can endure the pain, we can continue. If not, just pretend I didn't say anything." Lin Jin's words didn't really mean much. Yang Ming didn't hesitate at all. Although he still had his doubts about what kind of acupuncture technique Lin Jin was talking about, he was willing to take the risk. Not to mention a little bit of physical pain. Even if it was more painful, he would be able to endure it. At this, Lin Jin knew that Yang Ming wouldn't back down. The matter was basically set in stone. In fact, Lin Jin had been calculating Yang Ming's situation. To be honest, it wasn't difficult to repair Yang Ming's body. The pulse-seeking technique and the ghost blood beast were Lin Jin's biggest trump card. In addition, he had a miraculous item like the water reservoir armor. In critical moments, he could use the water element to protect Yang Ming's veins. In short, while Lin Jin said he wasn't confident, he was at least 90% sure he could do it. He only did it so that Yang Ming would be grateful for his help. However, Yang Ming's pet beast wasn't so easy to solve. Chapter 527. Nowadays, blood contract beast cultivators ruled the world. The strength of a pet beast determined the ceiling of a cultivator. If appraiser Yang Ming wanted to seek revenge from the Demonic Appraisal Association, he could forget about it if he didn't have a worthy pet beast. This incident had become a deadlock for him. Even though Yang Ming was a rank 4 beast appraiser, he was at his wit's end in this situation. After all, the Demonic Appraisal Association was too ruthless. Forcefully separating his pet beast with a secret technique was akin to tearing off a huge chunk of his own flesh. The damage done to his cultivation was irreparable. Yang Ming was out of ideas. However, he could slowly think of a solution. His top priority now was to treat his injuries. Yang Ming couldn't even walk on his own. If he didn't solve this problem, it would only be a waste of time. Now that Yang Ming had made his stance clear, he was willing to endure any pain, and no matter the outcome, he would accept it. With that, Lin Jin wouldn't say anything else. He would just treat him. Of course, even for Lin Jin, Yang Ming's injuries were too severe. It couldn't be treated in a short period of time. It might take hours or even an entire day. Yang Ming will listen to appraiser Lin's arrangements. Yang Ming had no objections. Forget an entire day, he could even take a few months. As long as his body could return to normal. Lin Jin began. With his current cultivation level, he didn't need to make any preparations. He tossed out a few needles, and they instantly pierced into Yang Ming's body. This is the internal acupuncture technique. Xu Xiaolu and Shang watched curiously from the side. Both of them were learning the pulse-seeking technique from Lin Jin. Shang was already quite proficient, while Xu Xiaolu had only learned the technique for a short period of time. She might not be as proficient as Shang in the pulse-seeking technique, but in terms of potential, Shang couldn't compare to Xu Xiaolu. After all, Xu Xiaolu was a rank 5 or even rank 6 beast appraiser. She had lived for more than 500 years and had a wealth of experience, so it was only a matter of time before she caught up to Shang. She might even surpass Lin Jin in the future. However, right now, she was watching Lin Jin perform the internal acupuncture technique with relish. Shang was observing closely as well. Opportunities like this didn't come often. At this time, Lin Jin closed his eyes and used his mana to move the needles. Lin Jin had already figured out the condition of Yang Ming's body. He also immediately thought of a set of treatment methods. First, he used the pulse-seeking technique to mend the wound. Then he used the power of the Devil Blood Beast to mend the damage in the other party's body. It was like a piece of clothing. If it was torn, it could be mended directly. However, if a piece was missing, it would need to be filled in with another piece of cloth. This was called a patch. The blood of the Ghost Blood Beast was like a patch. Fortunately, Lin Jin's rank 5 Ghost Blood Beast was extremely powerful. It could produce blood on its own, so it wouldn't be a problem to give away some of its blood. First, he sewed up a few important meridians in Yang Ming's body. This process lasted for 2 hours. During this time, Yang Ming endured the pain in his body. He was sweating profusely, but he didn't make any sound. In this aspect, he was better than most people. After sewing up these important meridians, it was time to repair the damaged internal organs. Some places needed to be re-sewn up, which was even more of a torture. Lin Jin cast a spell, and Yang Ming's throat felt itchy. He lowered his head and vomited. All he spat out was black blood. To spit out. Lin Jin knew this was normal. Lin Jin was currently wiping the sweat off his forehead. He had expended quite a bit of mana to move the needles earlier. Although he didn't seem to be doing much, each needle required his precise control. Even the slightest mistake could result in irreparable consequences. Meanwhile, Lin Jin took out the pellet furnace and had Shanga hover in the air. Then he tossed in some herbs and extracted the nourishing spirit water from the water reservoir armor before tempering them with his own dragon fire. This wasn't considered pelletization. It was just a temporary decoction. However, there was probably no one else in this world who could use this method to refine medicine. Even Xiao Shu was amazed at this sight. She mused that she had to find a way to ask Lin Jin to learn this method. However, she kept quiet, knowing that she shouldn't disturb Lin Jin during this crucial moment. Hence, she watched intently, learning the method and principles behind it. The intensity of the dragon fire was unimaginable, so it only took Lin Jin a few moments to successfully decoct the medicinal concoction Lin Jin required. Then, Lin Jin used his finger to guide the concoction using the water reservoir armor. A portion of the concoction was poured into Yang Ming's mouth, while the rest was applied to the needles and seeped into Yang Ming's skin. This way, the medicinal effects could be maximized. Time passed. From the beginning of the diagnosis and treatment of Yang Ming to the present, several hours had passed. The sky was dark. During this time, many people came to visit Lin Jin, but they were all stopped outside by his disciples. Upon hearing that appraiser Lin was treating appraiser Yang Ming inside, the visitors were shocked. Everyone knew about Yang Ming's injuries. He was basically a cripple, and under normal circumstances, it was impossible to treat him. Hence, once the news spread, many people came to visit. Many rank 3 beast appraisers came, some of whom were Yang Ming's disciples. Later on, a few rank 4 beast appraisers showed up as well. Even Mr. Zhong Zifeng showed up. Yang Ming's visit to Peach Blossom Residence was Zhong Zifeng's idea. Initially, Zhong Zifeng thought that Senior Shu was treating Yang Ming, but after asking around, he realized that wasn't the case. It's appraiser Lin Jin? Zhong Zifeng was stunned for a moment before realization dawned on him. He had figured out many things that he didn't understand before. Previously, he couldn't understand why Senior Shu would care so much about appraiser Lin, to the extent that they were inseparable and became best friends. Now, he understood that it was because appraiser Lin's skills were profound, and there was something about him that attracted Senior Shu. If Zhong Zifeng's skills and knowledge were weaker than Senior Shu's, Senior Shu wouldn't be interested in him at all. In that case, appraiser Lin must have something special about him. It was no wonder Senior Shu was attracted to him. To think that Curator's disciple is so impressive, then just how profound is Curator's skills? Zhong Zifeng mumbled to himself as he waited outside Peach Blossom Residence. Zhong Zifeng had heard a lot about the Curator recently, especially after Senior Shu had asked around about him. Thus, Zhong Zifeng began to collect information about him, whether intentionally or not. Initially, his evaluation of Curator was similar to Senior Shu's. But now, it seemed like his evaluation was still too low. If Curator's disciple was this impressive, it was hard to imagine how powerful Curator himself must be. It would be great if I had the chance to meet such an expert, Zhong Zifeng thought to himself. Compared to this, he was more concerned about the situation inside Peach Blossom Residence. Appraiser Yang Ming had been here for almost 10 hours now. Judging from the current situation, it seemed like appraiser Lin Jin was the one treating Yang Ming. Zhong Zifeng hoped that Yang Ming would recover. After all, Yang Ming was a teacher of the academy and an official rank 4 beast appraiser. It would be a shame if Yang Ming became a cripple. Chapter 528. However, hope was one thing. Zhong Zifeng didn't hold much hope in this matter. After all, Yang Ming's injuries were too severe. The culprits clearly wanted to cripple Yang Ming, so the torture they used was difficult to heal. For example, they severed his muscles and crushed his veins. Any one of them was an injury that couldn't be healed. Zhong Zifeng didn't have high hopes. He only hoped that Yang Ming would be able to walk freely like a normal person. As for recovering his strength, or even casting spells, he didn't dare to think about it. Even so, his hope was considered too high among the crowd. In fact, most of them shook their heads inwardly when they heard that it wasn't Senior Shu, but Lin Jin who was treating Yang Ming. They didn't know Senior Shu well, so they assumed that Senior Shu couldn't do anything, so they arranged for Lin Jin to put on an act. But since it was just an act, why waste time? This was something many people couldn't understand. Just then, an envoy from the palace came to inform them that Senior Shu and appraiser Lin were urgently summoned to the palace. This news came out of the blue. According to the envoy, when the emperor summoned the third prince today, he heard about what happened at the banquet, so he decided to meet the two appraisers on the spur of the moment. Of course, due to Heavenly Spiral Academy's unique status, the emperor was polite enough to only invite them over. After all, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't have any urgent matters to attend to. However, to his subordinates, this was something they had to accomplish. If they couldn't, wouldn't it mean that they weren't doing their job well? Hence, when the palace official heard that Appraiser Lin was treating another rank 4 beast appraiser, he panicked. Elder Zhong, you see, this is His Majesty's order. If we delay, I'm afraid that His Majesty will be unhappy. The inner officer looked quite young, and he must have been favored in recent years, which was why he became a steward. As a young man who had climbed his way up to the position of a palace official, it was inevitable for him to be arrogant and think highly of himself. Hence, there was a hint of threat in his tone. In other words, meeting His Majesty in the palace was more important than treating a patient's illness. Perhaps this would be the case anywhere else, but not here. This was the Heavenly Jade Academy. Even if His Majesty the Emperor saw Zhong Zifeng, he would have to be courteous and even treat him as an equal, because Zhong Zifeng was qualified and capable. Even the other rank 4 beast appraisers were treated with great respect by the emperor. However, this was the emperor's way of thinking, and not many people knew about it. At this moment, Zhong Zifeng glanced at the young internal official and said lightly, "A human life is at stake. Even if His Majesty finds out, he won't blame us." It was obvious that Zhong Zifeng was a little unhappy. Under normal circumstances, the internal officer should have stopped while he was ahead and reported back to the palace. Regardless of what happened, it had nothing to do with him. However, he was still annoyed, so he said, "If Appraiser Lin isn't free, please invite Senior Shu into the palace." This time, Zhong Zifeng didn't even want to look at this internal official. It was clear that Zhong Zifeng understood the emperor's side very well. He would never give such an order. Besides, how could Senior Shu be invited just because he wanted to? One had to know that Emperor Tianxian and Zhong Zifeng were good friends. Not many people knew about this relationship, but it was true that they were good friends for many years. Sometimes, the emperor would come to the Beast Appraisal Pavilion to chat with Zhong Zifeng in casual clothes. Hence, if Lin Jin was lucky, he would meet Senior Shu. His Majesty was well aware of Senior Shu's status, so he was probably using this as an excuse to invite Lin Jin into the palace to see if he could invite Senior Shu along. However, this internal official acted on his own. If he were to invite Senior Shu alone, it would be impossible. If he did, Senior Shu would surely reprimand him. Hence, Zhong Zifeng didn't say a word. He couldn't be bothered with the internal official. Although the internal official was furious, he didn't dare to lash out. After all, as arrogant as he was, he knew very well that this was Tianxian Academy. Hence, he could only suppress his anger and leave in a huff. On his way back, he was already thinking about how to deal with the people of this academy. It would be best if he could anger His Majesty. They're just a bunch of beast appraisers. What's there to be arrogant about? No matter how powerful they are, they still have to submit to the emperor, the internal official mumbled to himself. He moved very quickly, rushing back like a gust of wind and fire. Then, he reported back the situation with exaggerated details. Inside the palace, Emperor Feng Junwu was having a conversation with the third prince, Feng Ziqian. Of course, the old emperor was seated, while Feng Ziqian stood respectfully to the side. Upon hearing the internal official's report, Feng Junwu was slightly stunned. The internal official continued, "I didn't get to see Appraiser Lin this time. The entrance was blocked, saying that Appraiser Lin was treating someone and couldn't spare the time. I wanted to invite Senior Shu, but Elder Zhong reprimanded me for not seeing the bigger picture, so I was stopped as well." In other words, the internal official was implying that the appraisers in the academy didn't respect the emperor's wishes. However, even though he had used a trick with his words, how could he fool someone like Feng Junwu? How could the emperor of a premium country, the person in power, not be able to tell that something was fishy? "You may leave." Without saying anything else, Feng Junwu waved his hand. Unable to tell what the emperor was thinking, The internal official reluctantly retreated. However, he didn't know that from this day onwards, his future path would come to an end. In the future, the emperor wouldn't ask him to do anything, and he would soon be demoted. In the end, he would become an insignificant person who wasn't worth anything. There were too many people like him in the palace. Ziqian. At this time, Feng Junwu called out. Feng Ziqian was startled. He quickly bowed and said, "This child is here." Feng Ziqian felt a little guilty. Appraiser Lin had refused to see him because he was afraid of his father's wrath. However, he heard Feng Junwu ask, "How are things between you and Princess Ruoli?" Feng Ziqian quickly answered, "Not bad." Feng Junwu chuckled. "This time, even I couldn't tell that you would be the one to win Princess Ruoli's favor in the end. But this is your good fortune. Make good use of it. Also, if you have nothing else to do, go talk to Appraiser Lin more often and get closer to him." Feng Ziqian nodded. This was his father's advice. What did this mean? It meant that his father was starting to value him. No doubt, this was a good sign. Right, the curator who came to me asking to borrow Daelord's heavenly tome. Is his disciple this Appraiser Lin Jean? Feng Junwu asked. Feng Ziqian nodded. He had indeed mentioned this before. After all, he had promised the curator. Even if he wasn't treated well, he wouldn't forget what he had to say. All right, you may leave now. Feng Junwu didn't pursue the matter. Feng Ziqian wanted to say something, but hesitated. After some thought, he decided to leave. He wanted to say something nice about the curator, but decided against it. After all, the curator wasn't in Tianxin City right now. Once the curator was here during his father's birthday celebration, his father would be able to witness the curator's capabilities. Only then would his father agree. Chapter 529. After Feng Ziqian left, he headed straight for Heavenly Jade Academy. His father had summoned Appraiser Lin at the last minute because he wanted to meet Senior Shu. However, Appraiser Lin had something urgent to attend to, so he couldn't make it. Naturally, Senior Shu couldn't come along either. Feng Ziqian knew that although his father didn't voice it, he was secretly unhappy. This was a common problem for emperors. However, his father understood the importance of beast appraisers in the academy. How did Heavenly Jade become a premium country? Wasn't it all because of Heavenly Jade Academy? With centuries of experience, there were many rank 4 beast appraisers and even rank 5 beast appraisers. To a certain extent, a rank 4 beast appraiser was more valuable than a rank 5 beast appraiser. Because rank 5 beast appraisers didn't exist, it would be difficult for them to evolve or even recover from injuries. However, as long as there were beast appraisers, there would be more rank 5 beast appraisers. Hence, there was nothing his father could do, even if he was unhappy. Feng Ziqian, on the other hand, was curious about what could hold Appraiser Lin back. He only found out the details when he rushed to the academy. I see. When Feng Ziqian saw that many beast appraisers from the academy were already waiting outside Peach Blossom Abode, including Mr. Zhong, he understood. That D*net internal officer didn't explain the situation in detail. Feng Ziqian finally understood what was going on. Back then, the internal officer didn't explain the situation clearly and played a trick. A person like this couldn't be allowed to stay, at least not anymore. If his father had been enraged and wanted to pursue the matter, things would have gotten out of hand. Even a beast appraiser of Mr. Zhong's caliber could only wait outside, afraid to disturb Appraiser Lin. If his father had interfered, the other beast appraisers in the academy would definitely be displeased. It might even cause a rift between them. However, his father clearly knew this, so he didn't pursue the matter. Old ginger is spicier. Feng Ziqian couldn't help but sigh. The academy had a high degree of autonomy when a teacher was attacked, severely injured, or defected. Sometimes, they wouldn't even report this to the palace. However, the palace would also secretly investigate and obtain some information. Feng Ziqian knew a little about the incident with Appraiser Yang. He also knew that there might be a defector in the academy. However, the academy hadn't come to a conclusion yet, so they hadn't issued any arrest warrants. Feng Ziqian knew a little about Appraiser Yang's injury as well. To him, the injury was too severe. Not only had his pet beast been taken away, but his cultivation foundation had also been destroyed. From now on, forget casting spells. He would need someone to take care of him even when he was walking or living a normal life. He was no different from a cripple. However, appraiser Yang Ming was from Jilu country, so even if he was severely injured, it wouldn't affect Spiral country too much. Again, the royal family was more concerned about their own interests. Things were different for the academy. No matter where they came from, as long as they were an appraiser of the academy would do its best to treat their injuries. This was undeniable, and it was a tradition that had been passed down for centuries in Heavenly Jade Academy. Now, Feng Ziqian was in no hurry to leave. He was curious as to how appraiser Lin would save appraiser Yang Ming. It wasn't just him. Everyone knew that appraiser Yang Ming's injury was incurable. Even Mr. Zhong couldn't do anything about it. But now, everyone was filled with anticipation. This was because Mr. Zhong was currently ranked number 2 in the academy. Number 1, or rather, number 1 had always been number 1, was Senior Shu. It was certain that Senior Shu was currently in Peach Abode. Hence, with Senior Shu's guidance, or even personal help, it might be possible. This was a guess any normal person would have. However, when Feng Ziqian sought confirmation from Mr. Zhong, the latter told the third prince that even Senior Shu couldn't do anything about appraiser Yang Ming's injury. Lin Jin was the one who was currently treating appraiser Yang Ming. Feng Ziqian was stunned. He didn't dwell too much on this question because he soon figured out the reason. Appraiser Lin Jin had been taught by a powerful master. How could curator's disciple be weak? Feng Ziqian didn't plan to leave immediately. If possible, he would wait until the results were out today. Feng Ziqian suddenly noticed an old internal official of the palace had arrived. He was here to scout out the situation. Needless to say, he must have been sent by his father. It seemed like his father was curious and concerned about this matter. Feeling bored, Feng Ziqian looked around and was surprised to find a large crane squatting on the wall of Peach Abode. The crane had an extraordinary aura, and its feathers were rich and shiny. When Feng Ziqian looked at it, the bird seemed to have sensed his gaze and turned to look at him. Just like that, the man and the crane met. In the end, it was Feng Ziqian who was defeated. This crane isn't simple. Feng Ziqian immediately came to this conclusion. He was experienced and knowledgeable, but he had never seen a crane like this. Its eyes were too sharp. Looking up, Feng Ziqian saw an eagle squatting on one of Peach Abode's rooftops. The bird was motionless like a statue. However, it wasn't small in size. Squatting there, it looked like a sitting child. Feng Ziqian had a feeling that this eagle and crane weren't simple at all. Time trickled by. Another 2 hours had passed. As the night deepened, the door to Peach Abode was finally pushed open. Everyone immediately looked over at the same time. However, it wasn't Lin Jin or his disciple who pushed open the door. It was appraiser Yang himself. Feng Ziqian's heart skipped a beat. Didn't they say that appraiser Yang Ming was crippled? Everyone else had the same question. After appraiser Yang opened the door, he saluted Lin Jin, who had just walked him out. Appraiser Lin, I, Yang Ming, will never forget your kindness. Yang Ming was visibly emotional. His eyes were red as if he had been crying. Appraiser Lin Jin returned the gesture with a kind expression. You and I are both teachers of the academy, so it's only right for us to help each other out. I'm just doing what I can, but as I mentioned earlier, I've repaired the damage to your meridians and internal organs. Some parts of your body are even tougher than before, but you've only just recovered from your injuries, so you'll still need to recuperate. Remember to take the pills I've given you every day, as they'll stabilize in 3 to 5 days at most. By then, you should be able to gather spirit energy and cast spells without any problems. Appraiser Yang Ming nodded in agreement. You're welcome. Yang Ming nodded repeatedly, his attitude respectful. When he saw the crowd outside, he saluted them and said, I'll have to trouble everyone to wait here. Appraiser Lin has used his skills to repair all my injuries. There's no need to worry. That simple statement confirmed everyone's suspicions. Right now, everyone's hearts were in turmoil. They were excited and confused. When appraiser Yang first entered, he was being carried by a large tiger, no different from a cripple. But after half a day, he was no different from a normal person. Some even sensed a unique aura emanating from Yang Ming. He actually looked like a dragon and a tiger. This wasn't an illusion. When Lin Jin sewed and repaired Yang Ming's meridians, especially connecting the tendons and muscles, he used dragon tendon and tiger bone. Although he only used a little, Yang Ming felt like he had been reborn. Chapter 530. If he could slowly adapt to this body, it might be a blessing in disguise for Yang Ming. After all, using dragon tendons and tiger bones to mend a person's body was a first for Lin Jin. If he succeeded, Yang Ming's physical strength would be several times stronger than before. His spirit energy storage would also increase by several folds. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. The only problem now was that even Lin Jin couldn't help Yang Ming form a blood pact with a new pet beast. Of course, this was only temporary. In a museum of deadly beasts, there were ways to solve such unsolvable problems. All they needed was time. In any case, Yang Ming's situation was the best he could hope for. As a rank 4 beast appraiser, Yang Ming knew how difficult this task was. Hence, other than gratitude, he also felt admiration for Lin Jin. In Yang Ming's mind, Lin Jin's skills had already surpassed Mr. Zhong's. In certain aspects, even Senior Shu was no match for Lin Jin. To think Yang Ming would make things difficult for Lin Jin right from the start. Zhong Zifeng came over and studied Yang Ming from head to toe. He noticed that Yang Ming was no longer as dispirited as before. Instead, he seemed more mature now, and his posture had grown taller. Although he looked weak, as if he had just recovered from serious illness, Zhong Zifeng could sense his potential and strength. What kind of skill is this? Zhong Zifeng mumbled to himself. He patted Yang Ming's shoulder and turned to Lin Jin. The desire for knowledge in his eyes was unconcealable. Forget Zhong Zifeng. The other beast appraisers in the academy were the same. If it weren't for the circumstances, they would have immediately sought Lin Jin's help. This was a common problem among beast appraisers. Lin Jin took in all of their passionate gazes. He knew exactly what they were thinking. Even if he didn't say anything today, he could already imagine how many people would pay him a visit tomorrow. Lin Jin didn't want that to happen. Hence, after giving it some thought, he said, "Everyone, it's getting late, and I've been practicing acupuncture for several hours now, so I'm feeling a little tired. Tomorrow afternoon, Lin Jin will be giving a lecture on acupuncture in the first lecture hall. If any teachers are interested, feel free to attend." Having said that, Lin Jin saluted everyone before closing the door. Speaking of which, Lin Jin was indeed tired. After all, he had repaired more than 100 of Yang Ming's damaged veins and veins. But at the same time, this was also a form of cultivation for Lin Jin. His pulse-seeking technique had already reached its peak, but who knew that he would have another breakthrough after mending Yang Ming's veins? Just like the saying goes, there's no end to learning. Lin Jin mumbled to himself. Xu Xiaolu and Shang'er came over. Lin Jin knew what they wanted to ask, so he waved them off. "I'm tired. You guys can come to class tomorrow." "All right, Shang'er, when you're free, recite the energy formation a few times. Don't let those guys wait for nothing." Having said that, Lin Jin went back to sleep. Shang'er did not understand, so Xu Xiaolu told her what was going on. When Lin Jin referred to them, he was referring to the spiritual beast that had started on the path of cultivation. The carp in the pond, the white snake in the bushes, the giant crane on the wall, and the falcon on the roof. Your master asked you to recite it, so don't discount it. Being a painting spirit, Xu Xiaolu had no idea what it meant to be sleepy. She leaned against the wall and looked at Shang. Shang'er didn't say much. She sat up straight and began reciting the beast energy formation softly. Of course, she also added in her own understanding. This was similar to what Lin Jin had taught them about cultivation. But if they were to comprehend it from a different angle, they might be able to learn something unexpected from the spiritual beasts. Therefore, Shang'er recited his own cultivation insights, and the few spirit beasts were immediately mesmerized by it. Senior Mo was also squatting at the side, seriously studying and cultivating. It knew that Shang'er was Lin Jin's eldest disciple. She had the most profound and complete cultivation technique and was its senior in terms of monster cultivation. Xu Xiao Lu wasn't a monster, and she didn't need to cultivate the beast energy formation. She only wanted to listen out of curiosity and to broaden her knowledge. After listening for a while, Xu Xiao Lu began to feel restless. With a slight movement, she sneaked into the room. Inside, Lin Jin was sitting cross-legged on the bed with a needle in his hand. His eyes were shut as if he was in deep thought. What is he doing? Xu Xiao Lu was curious, but she didn't approach him. Lin Jin must have had a sudden epiphany, so he was deep in thought. Under normal circumstances, he shouldn't be disturbed. Since ancient times, cultivators had always paid attention to protection. This was to have someone they could trust watch over them while they were trying to comprehend something to prevent others from disturbing them. After all, once one's thoughts were disturbed, it would be difficult to enter that state of enlightenment again. Xu Xiao Lu could tell that Lin Jin was in the middle of enlightenment, so she leaned against the door and acted as his protector. I've helped him so much. When he wakes up, I'll have to ask him what he's learned, Xu Xiao Lu mumbled to herself. Just as Xu Xiao Lu thought, Lin Jin had entered a state of enlightenment. Of course, his psyche was currently inside the Museum of Deadly Beasts, looking at a book that had fallen from one of the museum's shelves. This book had fallen out of nowhere. At first, Lin Jin thought it was a reward from the museum, but he soon realized that wasn't the case. He must have had some sort of epiphany which added fuel to the fire, causing the corresponding book to fall. The book talked about an even more profound realm of needle technique. It had a rather impressive name, Body Forging Needle. The first page of the book stated, "Mastery of the pulse-seeking technique requires one to reach the peak of perfection in order to cultivate it." Lin Jin had pondered over this issue for a long time. In reality, he didn't have a clear understanding of what level his pulse-seeking technique had reached. After all, before him, no one had cultivated the pulse-seeking needle technique. Those who had cultivated it after him, whether it was Shang'er or Xiao Shu Lu, were definitely far inferior to him in terms of this technique. However, Lin Jin wasn't 100% sure that he had cultivated the pulse-seeking technique to the peak of perfection. That was why he hesitated. But after thinking about it carefully, he realized that he might have been overthinking things. The Museum of Deadly Beasts had clearly acknowledged his strength, or else it wouldn't have dropped this book. This was probably because he had mended Yang Ming's veins today. Not only was his technique superb, but it was also because he hadn't been restricted by the pulse-seeking technique itself. Instead, he had been developing new ways to use it. Condensing the Thunderfire Needle was one of them. This time, using dragon tendon and tiger bone as a replacement to mend Yang Ming's body was a new innovation. Only when the pulse-seeking technique had reached the peak of perfection could he achieve this. Therefore, there shouldn't be any problems for him to cultivate the body-forging spirit refining needle now. Thus, Lin Jin flipped the book open and began reading carefully. Lin Jin was instantly immersed in it, unable to extricate himself. Chapter 531. This spirit-casting needle was definitely more profound than the pulse-seeking technique. To a certain extent, it had already surpassed the knowledge of most people in this world. In this technique, humans, beasts, and monsters could all be mended with a needle and thread. Simply put, Lin Jin could even use the internal organs, bones, and skin of various beasts to create a new beast. It was the same for humans. Moreover, even if a spirit was damaged, it could be mended with acupuncture. This was a little exaggerated, but with the cultivation method right before his eyes, Lin Jin had no choice but to believe it. This was a higher level of the pulse-seeking technique. For Lin Jin, who had already touched the ceiling of his needle technique, this spirit-casting needle came at the right time, so he immediately started cultivating. To outsiders, it looked like he was meditating on his own. Humans were oblivious to the passage of time during cultivation. Shang'er lectured for half an hour before ending her teachings to the spirit beasts. Lin Jin had no idea. Afterward, Shang'er and Xu Xiao Lu stood on either side of Lin Jin as he studied. Lin Jin had no idea either. An entire night passed. Early the next morning, visitors were all stopped at the door. Shanger would talk to those with a higher status, and Xu Xiao Lu would step in. In the morning, Xu Xiao Lu only went out once. That was because Zhong Zifeng and the third prince, Feng Ziqian, were there. This morning, the emperor wanted to invite appraiser Lin into the palace for breakfast. This was a great honor, so Feng Ziqian volunteered to invite appraiser Lin over. When Zhong Zifeng heard about it, he came as well, but was stopped by Xu Xiaolu. Xu Xiaolu didn't know anything about this honor. All she knew was that Lin Jin was trying to comprehend a cultivation method. At this juncture, forget the emperor. Even the immortal emperor wouldn't make an exception. With Xu Xiaolu blocking the way, no one dared to barge in. Zhong Zifeng turned to look at Feng Ziqian, who gave him an understanding look before bidding him farewell. Although it was a little difficult, Feng Ziqian dared not delay or hide anything. After all, there was an old eunuch who served his father with him, so he could speak his mind. Emperor Feng Junwu chuckled at this. Since that's the case, we'll talk about it another day. He didn't seem to mind at all, but who could fathom the mind of an emperor? A little later, Emperor Feng Junwu met with Crown Prince Feng Xiong. In the past few days, Feng Xiong had requested to see the emperor several times, but he was always turned away. This time, he was finally summoned, so Feng Xiong was naturally very excited. In a pavilion where the emperor was resting, Feng Xiong prostrated on the ground. I heard that you want to see me these few days. Feng Junwu was flipping through a book without lifting his eyelids. Feng Xiong hurriedly lowered his head. Xiong hasn't seen Imperial Father for a few days. I miss him very much. Feng Junwu nodded. It's rare for you to be so considerate. Have you visited the Grand Preceptor these past few days? This time, Feng Xiong came mainly to talk about this matter. At the banquet last time, Feng Ziqian was in the limelight, which made Feng Xiong very unhappy. But things had already happened. Now he heard that Princess Ruoli and Feng Ziqian were in love, and their relationship had improved by leaps and bounds. This made Feng Xiong gnash his teeth. He thought about it, and felt that he couldn't let Feng Ziqian be complacent. Even if Feng Ziqian and Princess Ruoli got married, it didn't matter. If Imperial Father didn't think highly of Feng Ziqian, it didn't matter what he did. So these days, Feng Xiong had been wanting to see Feng Junwu to show his filial piety. But the more Feng Junwu refused to see him, the more flustered he was. The more flustered he was, the more he kept asking to see him. Speaking of which, Feng Xiong had already lost his mind. Hearing Imperial Father's question, Feng Xiong hurriedly said, yes, but the Grand Preceptor said that he wanted to reflect on his mistakes behind closed doors. He won't see any visitors, including me. Suddenly, Feng Junwu fiercely slammed the memorial in his hand on the table, making a loud noise. Feng Xiong was scared and trembled. Don't you have a brain? Feng Junwu scolded at this moment. Feng Xiong was scared, but he didn't understand why Imperial Father scolded him. For a moment, he was at a loss. Feng Junwu sighed very tiredly. Xiong, you are the eldest son of the Emperor. I have trained you as my successor since you were a child. I have given you the best things, but what about you? You can't be put in an important position. Your strategy is not as good as your second brother's. You can't be compared with your third brother's modesty and mellow. The only thing you can rely on is your identity as the first prince. This time, you invited the Grand Preceptor to attend a banquet. That was a great advantage. But in the end, you didn't seize this opportunity at all. Feng Junwu's face was full of resentment. Below him, Feng Xiong was even more nervous and afraid. He felt that something was wrong. In the past, Imperial Father had never reprimanded him so severely. Have you ever understood why the Grand Preceptor reflected on his mistakes behind closed doors this time? Do you think he is willing to reflect on his mistakes behind closed doors? This thing happened because of you. You don't want to solve it. Instead, you act as if nothing happened. You disappoint me. Feng Junwu was really disappointed. In the past, he still had a little hope for his eldest son. He hoped that he could slowly learn to be smarter and grow up. Even if he couldn't reach his expectations, it was okay as long as he made some progress. But reality was cruel. After such a long time, Feng Xiong hadn't improved at all. Today, Feng Junwu was utterly disappointed, which was why he reprimanded him. Imperial Father. Feng Xiong was terrified. His mind was in a mess, and he didn't know how to deal with this. This was the reason why Feng Junwu was so angry. Feng Xiong was the one who invited the Grand Preceptor, but he had been locked in his room for the past few days. Even if Feng Junwu tried to get someone to invite him, it was useless. Feng Junwu only needed to ask around to figure out what was going on. It was Senior Shu from Heavenly Jade Academy who reprimanded the Grand Preceptor, Sima Qing. So how could the latter dare to retort? He must have obediently gone back to his room to reflect on his mistakes. To put it bluntly, if Senior Shu didn't say anything, Sima Qing wouldn't even dare to step out of his room. If Feng Xiong was smarter, he would think of a way to meet Senior Shu or Lin Jin to plead with Senior Shu. As long as Senior Shu spoke, the Grand Preceptor, Sima Qing, would come out. However, Feng Xiong couldn't figure this out, nor could he see it. He was far inferior to his two younger brothers. Apparently, Feng Zishan had tried to recruit Lin Jin, but was rejected. Feng Ziqian had even mentioned that he would think of a way to get appraiser Lin Jin to plead with Senior Shu. Why couldn't this blockhead Feng Xiong understand? Forget it. Feng Junwu didn't want to waste any more time, so he waved for Feng Xiong to leave. The latter was scared out of his wits and could only leave obediently. An old internal official standing guard outside the door knew that Feng Xiong was done for. However, he couldn't blame anyone else for this. After all, a slow-witted person like Feng Xiong wasn't suitable to wield authority. Forcing him to do it would only ruin Merak's foundation. Just then, the old emperor called out, "Yin Quan, come in." Chapter 532. Upon hearing this, the old servant quickly bowed and entered to pay his respects. "Tell me about it." Feng Junwu was visibly sad and exhausted. The old servant bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I have investigated appraiser Lin's background thoroughly." Following that, the old servant recounted everything, starting from Lin Jin's time in Maple City of the Jade Dragon Kingdom to his arrival at Tianxian City for the Rank 4 Beast Appraiser evaluation. It seems like this appraiser Lin is indeed outstanding. Putting everything else aside, it's not easy for Senior Shu to think so highly of him. Feng Junwu had regained the dignity of a king, and there was a sharp glint in his eyes. I've summoned him twice, but he didn't show up. What's the reason? Is it really as Ziqian said? Feng Junwu asked again. The old servant nodded. About that, it's true. Something happened to that appraiser Yang from the academy. The old eunuch recounted everything that had happened recently in full detail, not hiding anything or exaggerating the truth. Feng Junwu's expression softened as he listened to the old servant's narration. It really seems like a coincidence. But is that appraiser Lin Jin really that amazing? Even Mr. Zhong and Senior Shu were helpless against an illness, yet he was able to treat it? Feng Junwu's expression was filled with curiosity and concern. Your Majesty, although it's inconceivable, it is indeed so. Now that I think about it, Lin Jin's master must be very powerful. There have been many rumors about Curator lately. Just the fact that he went to Daluo Temple alone and forced them to concede is already a hot topic. More importantly, I received reliable news that when Curator barged into Daluo Temple alone, a Buddha appeared. At this point, Feng Junwu's complexion changed and his breathing quickened. Buddha and immortals were beings of the same level. Didn't this mean that Daluo Temple had an immortal watching over it? I knew it. Feng Junwu mumbled to himself. It was impossible for Daluo Temple to be on par with a premium country like Tianxian without a strong foundation. Feng Junwu had long heard that Daluo Temple had a living Buddha, but who knew that it would be confirmed this time? Putting Daluo Temple aside, if the curator could force Buddha to make a move, didn't that mean that he also had immortal-level techniques? In terms of combat power, the level 5 Blood-Pact Beast was no weaker than the legendary immortals. Although there were not many level 5 beasts in the Spiral Great Nation, there were still quite a few. This was the foundation. Other than that, there was also the Heavenly Jade Academy, a sacred land for appraisers. Hence, Feng Junwu wouldn't be afraid, even if he had to face the legendary immortals and Buddhas. However, forming a blood pact with a pet beast still had its drawbacks. Their strengths lay in the fact that they could greatly enhance their combat prowess, allowing them to control their pet beasts in battle. They could even borrow the power of their blood contracts to strengthen themselves, granting them unimaginable supernatural powers. The shortcoming was that humans were still humans, and it was difficult for their lifespans to break through. If it was just an ordinary person, reaching 100 years of age was already considered a long life. If it was a cultivator with a successful blood pact, they could usually live for a few more decades. In this world, there were still a few experts who knew the cultivation methods of the immortal Tao. Only a few of them could reach the ceiling of 200 years. Of course, some of the world's spirits, rare demon cultivators, or rare beasts could live for more than 200 years. Some of them could even live for hundreds of years. As the emperor of Spiral Great Nation, Feng Junwu was naturally troubled by this. He feared death and longed for immortality. He didn't envy the immortals and Buddhas who could roam the world unhindered, but he envied their path of immortality. Take the Buddha of Daluo Temple, for example. It was common knowledge that the immortal Tao had fallen more than 1,000 years ago. If there really was a Buddha, he was most likely a remnant of that era. Even with a conservative estimate, the Buddha's lifespan must have exceeded 1,000 years, maybe even more than 2,000 years. What kind of long lifespan was this? He was incredibly envious. Feng Junwu was 79 years old this year. His 80th birthday was coming soon. 80 years old. As the emperor of a premium country like Feng Junwu, he wasn't that old. However, according to the rules of Spiral Great Nation, the emperor was never more than 90 years old. That was because he was too old to be able to keep up in all aspects. His brain couldn't keep up, and his stamina couldn't keep up either. When that time came, he would be able to enjoy his remaining years. To put it bluntly, he would just be sitting around waiting for death. What was the point of living another 10 or 20 years? That was why Feng Junwu wanted to seek immortality. Yin Quan, do you think this curator is an immortal? Feng Junwu suddenly asked at this time, and the old internal official immediately felt a wave of pressure. He had served Feng Junwu for many years and knew his master's personality very well. The fact that the other party was asking in such a tone meant that he was very concerned about this matter. That was why he had to be careful with his answers. He had to be as honest as possible, but he also had to consider his master's feelings. Your Majesty, I have only heard rumors about this curator, but I believe that he must be extraordinary to be able to come to Daluo Temple alone and escape unscathed. Whether he is an immortal or not, we will know when we meet him. The old internal official's words sounded vague, but in fact, it hit Feng Junwu's heart. Yes, his third son, Feng Ziqian, seemed to be acquainted with the curator. He had even introduced the curator to him several times, saying that the curator wanted to borrow the Tao Lord's heavenly tome from the vault. In that case, the curator must have a request. If that was the case, he would definitely be able to meet the curator and ask him. At this thought, Feng Junwu felt much better. Right, the curator's disciple, the new rank 4 beast appraiser, Lin Jin, has a class this afternoon. I heard it has caused quite a stir in the academy, the old internal official suddenly mentioned. Feng Junwu was in a great mood. After a moment of thought, he said, this appraiser Lin is very busy. Since he doesn't have time to meet me, it's not a big deal for me to meet him. I'll just treat it as a way to relax. The old internal official's information was accurate. Ever since the news of Lin Jin's acupuncture class last night came out, the academy was in an uproar. In the hundreds of years since the establishment of the academy, Lin Jin was undoubtedly the fastest to rise to fame. In just a few short days, Lin Jin's name was already known by everyone in the academy. Last night's treatment of appraiser Yang Ming was an injury that even Mr. Zhong couldn't do anything about. Anyone who had seen appraiser Yang Ming would know that he was a cripple with no chance of recovery. Yet, appraiser Lin Jin used 10 hours to forcefully treat appraiser Yang Ming's injuries. When appraiser Yang Ming walked out of Peach Blossom Abode on his own, many people were shocked. Among them, the ones who were the most excited were probably Yang Ming's former disciples. Yang Ming was considered a senior teacher in the academy. After all, he was already a rank 4 beast appraiser several years ago. Although he couldn't be considered to have students all over the world, the academy still had more than 20 students under his tutelage. These people were so excited that they burst into tears. At first, they thought appraiser Yang Ming was done for. But in the end, things took a turn for the better. This was a huge surprise to them. Chapter 533. As a result, these people were deeply grateful to Lin Jin. Most of the rumors about appraiser Lin Jin's prowess in the academy were actually spread by Yang Ming students. Hence, before appraiser Lin Jin's afternoon public lecture even started, there were already no empty seats left. That's right, there were no empty seats left. After another teacher finished his lecture in the morning, many people immediately swarmed in to occupy the seats. This was a public lecture, so anyone could attend. Many of them came out of admiration. After noon, when everyone had finished their lunch, many people realized that many of the people who had come to reserve seats were actually teaching assistants of the academy. Assistant lecturers were all rank 3 beast appraisers. They rarely attended public lectures unless it was taught by someone like Mr. Zhong. They were rarely seen in other teachers' public lectures. Later on, some of the students who stayed behind noticed that it wasn't just the assistant lecturers. Even a rank 4 beast appraiser was here. In fact, the seats were already full. But since the teachers were here, many students had no choice but to give up their seats. Hence, there was still some time before the public lecture started, but Lecture Hall 1 was already packed with people. Many people didn't expect to see such a scene. However, if one thought about it carefully, this was normal. Appraiser Yang Ming had made it clear that the person who saved him was appraiser Lin Jin, and it was a special acupuncture technique from Lin Jin. And today, Lin Jin was going to be lecturing on acupuncture techniques. Only an idiot wouldn't come. Even if it was just a few words of advice from teacher Lin Jin, it was useless to many people. After a while, someone cried out in surprise. Everyone turned to look, and it was appraiser Yang Ming. Yesterday, he was a cripple who couldn't even walk on his own. But today, appraiser Yang Ming was walking with a majestic aura. Other than that, appraiser Yang was followed by a large tiger. This tiger was the one Shang'er caught in the mountains. It used to carry Yang Ming all over the place. Although Yang Ming was successfully treated by Lin Jin and his health improved, he didn't give up on the tiger. In the past, a rank 2 tiger wouldn't even be worth mentioning in the eyes of a rank 4 beast appraiser like Yang Ming. But now, Yang Ming was determined to stay by its side. He wanted to return the favor and raise the rank of this big tiger. Naturally, appraiser Yang Ming would attend Lin Jin's public lecture today. He was now in awe of Lin Jin and yearned to learn more about his marvelous acupuncture skills. Peach Blossom House. Still, no one could enter. Lin Jin continued his study. He had clearly forgotten that he had lessons today as he continued immersing himself in the spirit casting needle. As Lin Jin already had the pulse-seeking technique as a foundation, and he even managed to comprehend the coiled wire needle from the pulse-seeking technique, his progress in learning the spirit casting needle was swift. It only took Lin Jin one night to break through the first realm of the spirit casting needle's 4 major realms. This speed was considered very fast. Under normal circumstances, even if someone was gifted, it would be impossible for them to succeed in a few months. Some people might not even be able to break through after 3 to 5 years. At this time, the afternoon public lecture had actually begun. Shang'er wanted to remind him. After all, she knew Lin Jin well and knew that he must have forgotten. If she didn't remind him, he might punish her when he snapped out of his daze. Xiao Shu didn't want to interfere. She couldn't care less about the public lecture, but in the end, she compromised. That was because Shang'er said that Lin Jin was the one who decided on the class. If he forgot, she should remind him or he would definitely throw a tantrum. After giving it some thought, Xiao Lu agreed that it made sense. If Lin Jin blamed her for stopping him, how was she supposed to ask him what he had learned? Hence, she and Shang went over and patted Lin Jin awake. After that, Lin Jin hurried to the lecture hall. As a teacher, he was definitely late this time. How embarrassing. Lin Jin felt helpless too. He was too engrossed in cultivating the spirit casting needle that he forgot about the important matter at hand. After all, cultivation could be done at any time, but he couldn't afford to miss the class that he had promised. Fortunately, he was only a little late. When Lin Jin arrived at the first lecture hall, he was startled by what he saw. It was a sea of people. This was obviously more than the usual number of people. Noticing that almost all the teachers were here, Lin Jin understood what was going on. Lin Jin even saw Zhong Zifeng and Xu Xiaolu coming in from outside. They stood in a corner and looked at Lin Jin expectantly. Of course, there were also many unfamiliar faces. Looks like I won't be able to explain myself if I don't teach them something real today, Lin Jin muttered to himself. Speaking of which, the pulse-seeking technique wasn't that important to him anymore. After all, he already had this spirit-casting needle, which was a higher level of acupuncture. Since that was the case, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to teach them some of the key points of the pulse-seeking technique. After all, most students might not be able to understand or digest it even if they were to listen. Only those with a high level of knowledge and experience might be able to obtain the true essence of this technique. With a solemn expression, Lin Jin cupped his fists and apologized, admitting that he was late today. Then, without further ado, he began his lecture. Lin Jin began by talking about the pulse-seeking technique's internal acupuncture section. This was a serious topic. As the saying went, once an expert spoke, one could immediately tell the difference. As soon as Lin Jin started, the crowd's expressions changed. First of all, many of the students had a look of confusion on their faces. After all, Lin Jin's internal acupuncture section was incredibly difficult. Those without a solid foundation wouldn't even be able to understand what he was talking about. Of course, some of the more skilled students looked excited as they quickly recalled their notes. They knew very well that what Teacher Lin was talking about today was the cream of the crop. Even if they didn't understand what he was talking about, they had to memorize it so that they could slowly digest it when they got back. It would definitely be beneficial to them. Meanwhile, the assistants and teachers who were rank 3 beast appraisers and above immediately understood how amazing the internal acupuncture section was. Of course, there were teachers who knew the internal acupuncture section as well. It was just that their approaches were different. However, this didn't stop them from learning from Lin Jin and learning from him. Especially after listening for a while, they could clearly feel that Lin Jin's internal acupuncture section was more profound. Hence, even the rank 4 beast appraisers were nodding in agreement. Sometimes they would smile, and at other times they would be in deep thought. Teacher Lin's internal acupuncture is amazing, Zhong Zifeng mumbled to himself. Zhong Zifeng muttered to himself. Next to him was Yang Ming, who also nodded repeatedly. Previously, when Master Lin helped me repair my meridians, his acupuncture skills were rare in this world, and he could perform multiple needles at the same time, which is much better than the average internal acupuncture technique. In other words, other people's internal acupuncture techniques could only manipulate one needle at a time. Also, the needles and thread used are unique. The manual on internal acupuncture mentioned that to use internal acupuncture, the thread required is extremely demanding and must be specially made. But Lin Jin's technique can coagulate blood into thread, which means that there must be a corresponding spell. Taken alone, this technique might not be inferior to internal acupuncture. As knowledgeable as Zhong Zifeng was, he could tell what the key points were. Yang Ming nodded in agreement. Chapter 534. The only person who looked calm was Xu Xiaolu. She already knew what Lin Jin was talking about, and she had her own unique understanding of it, so she was rather bored. In fact, Xu Xiaolu had basically cultivated the pulse-seeking technique. Other than a few parts where she was a little unfamiliar, she understood most of it. She wanted to hear about Lin Jin's epiphany last night. Xu Xiaolu had a feeling that whatever Lin Jin suddenly comprehended last night must be something extraordinary. Among the people present, there were two people in a corner. They were wearing hats, so their faces couldn't be seen. But upon closer inspection, one could tell that they weren't young anymore. They were Emperor Feng Junwu and his trusted aide, the old internal official. So, this is Lin Jin? He has a dignified appearance and an extraordinary aura, but isn't he a little too young for his age? Feng Junwu said in a hushed voice that only the old official could hear. The latter whispered back, "Although he's young, Your Majesty, look at the people in this hall. They're all elites of the academy. To have such charisma, it's no small feat." That was true. Feng Junwu nodded. He was only here out of curiosity. Truth be told, he had summoned Lin Jin twice, but the latter never showed up. Even if he had a good reason for doing so, Feng Junwu was still a little displeased. He was here to see what was so special about this Lin Jin. At this moment, Feng Junwu suddenly stood up and walked out. The old eunuch hurriedly followed behind him. Of course, the people in the hall noticed their abrupt departure, especially Lin Jin, who could see everything clearly from the podium. However, he only gave them a quick glance and didn't pay much attention to them. Once outside, Feng Junwu instructed the old official, "Go find Ziqian and have him invite Lin Jin again today. If he still doesn't show up, then forget about this matter." Having said that, he left. The old official immediately felt pressured. His Majesty was visibly annoyed, but he had no way to vent his anger. After all, even if Appraiser Lin was busy, this had happened twice in a row. Anyone else might be able to brush it off with a laugh, but His Majesty was Emperor of Heavenly Jade, so he couldn't just let this slide. So this time, no matter what, he had to get this done. The old eunuch mused, "Don't count on the third prince anymore. I might as well do it myself. No matter what, even if I have to kidnap someone, I have to bring Lin Jin to the palace." Inside the lecture hall, Lin Jin continued his lecture. After he finished talking about the internal acupuncture technique, he started to talk about a part of the pulse-seeking acupuncture technique. By this time, most of the students were already dizzy and could not understand what he was talking about. They could not even keep copying by hand. Among the students present, only 2 or 3 of them were able to keep up with their writing. As for those who were able to understand a little, only 2 or 3 of them could do so. Come to think of it, it was indeed difficult for someone who had just started listening to the pulse-seeking technique. Moreover, strictly speaking, Lin Jin's lecture on the pulse-seeking technique was actually meant for an assistant beast appraiser. Only a rank 3 beast appraiser like him would have the necessary knowledge and insight. For a rank 4 beast appraiser, this was what it meant to be an instant success. The pulse-seeking technique came from the Museum of Deadly Beasts. There were many types of acupuncture techniques in the world, but without a doubt, the pulse-seeking technique was one of the best. Even Zhong Zifeng was listening with great interest, nodding his head from time to time. Amazing, amazing. The internal acupuncture technique I was talking about was probably just a part of this technique. This technique is amazing, especially when it comes to controlling needles. From what I can see, this technique isn't just for treatment. It can also be used to kill without leaving a trace. As expected of a rank 5 beast appraiser, Zhong Zifeng had only listened to a part of the pulse-seeking technique, and he had already grasped its essence. He had even deduced the existence of the coiled wire needle in the pulse-seeking technique. Out of everyone present, only Zhong Zifeng and Xu Xiaolu had such a method. Time passed slowly. By the time Lin Jin finished talking about the pulse-seeking technique, he had come to a conclusion. Today's lecture was 1/3 of the pulse-seeking technique's content, and it was a unique style of its own. For the students of the academy, even if they could only comprehend half of it, it would still be a huge improvement. As for the assistants and teachers, although they wouldn't experience a complete transformation, the improvement was still significant. Hence, by the time Lin Jin was done, everyone, including Zhong Zifeng, stood up and bowed. This was a show of respect for a teacher. to teach by example, and to use one's own experience to guide others forward. That was what it meant to be a teacher. Regardless of age or experience, as long as one had learned something and achieved something, they were worthy of this bow. Lin Jin returned the bow and left without another word. He couldn't stay here for too long. In fact, Lin Jin had made the right choice. Forget the students. Even the teachers were pestering him for more questions. It was fine if it was only one or two, but he couldn't handle too many. Hence, Lin Jin left right after class without looking back. By the time he returned to Peach Blossom residence, Xu Xiaolu was already seated inside, sipping tea. She was an art spirit and had even created her own Cosmos ink, so her speed was unparalleled. That wasn't much. Before Lin Jin could speak, Xu Xiaolu spoke first. Your pulse-seeking technique is already flawless, and your own realm has been perfected. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you've reached the peak of perfection. You've been studying it for an entire night without sleeping, so you must have learned something new. Come, tell me about it. Don't hide it from me. Lin Jin smiled bitterly. Xu Xiaolu was a curious baby. As long as it was something she didn't know, she would try her best to learn about it. Moreover, her instincts were incredibly accurate. Lin Jin had indeed learned a lot from the Museum of Deadly Beasts last night. However, Lin Jin felt that he should keep this spirit-casting needle a secret for a little longer. If he couldn't even pass this little test, it was only a matter of time before he was drained by a Xu Xiaolu. Lin Jin waved his hand, refusing to admit it. I wasn't hiding it. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Lin Jin quickly went to open the door and saw an elderly man standing outside. He was dressed plainly, but had a unique aura about him. Beside him was a praiser Ouyang. Teacher Lin, this is the palace's chief internal official, Minister Yin. Lin Jin immediately identified the other party. Lin Jin immediately understood that this person was serving Emperor Tianxian. No wonder he had such a unique aura. Greetings, Inner Officer Yin. Lin Jin saluted. He was curious as to why Emperor Tianxuan's most trusted aide would pay him a visit. Unbeknownst to Lin Jin, Emperor Tianxian had already summoned him twice. Both times, he was delayed due to other matters. Also, neither Shang'er nor Xu Xiaolu took this matter to heart. Hence, no one reminded Lin Jin about it. Chapter 535. Now that inner officer Yin was here personally and had a praiser Ouyang with him, Lin Jin was finally able to learn about what happened earlier from the old officer. After learning that Emperor Tianxian had summoned him yesterday and today without him knowing, Lin Jin grew anxious. He immediately turned to Shang'er and Xu Xiaolu. Why didn't you tell me about such an important matter? Lin Jin was genuinely anxious. What was his purpose for coming to Heavenly Spiral Nation? Two things. One was to become a rank 4 beast appraiser, which he had already achieved. The other was to find a way to borrow the Heavenly Lord's Heavenly Tome from Heavenly Spiral Nation's treasury. This was arguably the most important matter at hand. To borrow the Heavenly Lord's Heavenly Scroll, Emperor Tianxian had to go through. Yet, the Emperor of a premium country had refused to meet him twice. Anyone in his position would be furious. If even Lin Jin felt this way, what more the others? However, there was no use regretting it now. Moreover, Lin Jin understood the situation back then. He couldn't leave, and even if he did, he probably wouldn't be able to go. But now that he had time, he had to make up for it. Inner Officer Yin, come in and have a seat. Lin Jin finally understood that if he wanted to borrow the Heavenly Lord's Heavenly Scroll, he had to be on good terms with the people in the palace. This old officer was definitely Emperor Tianxuan's trusted aide, so he had to be on good terms with him. It's all right. I'm just following the Emperor's orders, and I'm here to invite appraiser Lin into the palace. This matter cannot be delayed. Yin Quan chuckled without entering the yard. Lin Jin understood. After all, he was here on errand. It wouldn't be good if he was delayed. Since that's the case, let's go. Since Yin Quan didn't want to delay, Lin Jin did the same. He had to hurry. He had failed twice, so he had to hurry this time. I'll go too. Xu Xiaolu came out of the house. She was dressed in a red dress, and her skin was fair as snow. Her figure was perfect, and her facial features were exquisite. She looked just like a peerless beauty from a painting. She was indeed a spirit who walked out of a painting. In Xu Xiaolu's world, there was nothing in this world that she couldn't or didn't dare to do. Basically, she was the type of person who would do whatever she wanted. Just like now, when she heard that Lin Jin was going to the palace, her curiosity was piqued, and she wanted to tag along. Yin Quan was secretly delighted when he saw this. This woman in red was the legendary senior Xu of the academy. She was an existence that even Mr. Zhong had to treat with respect, and even His Majesty the Emperor was extremely afraid of. After all, Yin Quan was an old man in the palace, so he knew some of the legends of the little book building. Some of these legends were only heard decades ago when he first entered the palace. At that time, he was only a teenager. In the blink of an eye, more than 60 years had passed. Sigh, I can't look back on the past. A trace of melancholy surged out from Yin Quan's heart. It would be great if Senior Xu could come along. This was also what His Majesty hoped for. After all, the reason he invited Lin Jin was because of Senior Xu. Yin Quan knew what the Emperor was thinking. Last time at the banquet, the Grand State Preceptor Sima Qian had been reprimanded by Senior Xu and had to face the wall obediently when he returned. However, the Grand State Preceptor also had a lot of work to do. This time, it was equivalent to putting aside all his work. This wasn't in line with Spiral Nation's interests. Grand State Preceptor Sima Qian was well aware of this, but he didn't dare to come out unless Senior Xu asked him to. Hence, His Majesty the Emperor tried to approach Senior Xu about this, hoping that she would make an exception. However, His Majesty couldn't just invite Senior Xu. This was something His Majesty had done before. It wasn't just the current generation, even the previous and ancestral emperors had done the same thing. But the problem was that Senior Xu wouldn't pay any attention to them. As time went by, successive emperors stopped inviting Senior Xu directly because the emperor's reputation was still a reputation. No one would be able to stand having Senior Xu refuse to show up, and the worst part was that they couldn't lose their temper. And this time, Senior Xu actually attended a banquet that was open to the public. This was beyond the emperor's expectations. If it was because of Lin Jin, then Yin Quan would invite Senior Xu over. Hence, Yin Quan was elated. But then he heard Lin Jin say, "Don't go. You're going to meet His Majesty the Emperor, so there must be a lot of rules. You don't like it, so why would you go? Besides, I'll be back soon." Yin Quan's expression darkened at this. He really wanted to say something, but was afraid of making a fool of himself. He was so anxious that his forehead was drenched in sweat. "Forget it then. I'm not going." Xu Xiaolu's words made Yin Quan shudder. Did he hear wrongly? Lin Jin's words actually made Senior Xu change his mind? Wasn't this too much? At that moment, Yin Quan really wanted to rebuke Lin Jin and invite Senior Xu into the palace. But just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, he swallowed them back down. He couldn't say that. But this trip wasn't a wasted one. He wouldn't be returning empty-handed. Yin Quan had finally confirmed one thing, and that was the relationship between Lin Jin and Senior Xu. A legendary existence like Senior Xu acted on his own whims. To put it bluntly, he did whatever he wanted. The Grand Master of the nation, Sima Qing, and the Academy's current chief existence, Zhong Zifeng, could only be respectful toward Senior Xu. They did not dare to ask Senior Xu to do anything, and it was impossible for Senior Xu to listen to them. But wasn't it strange? Why would Senior Xu listen to this young appraiser Lin Jin? Could it be that Lin Jin was a natural counter to Senior Xu? Yin Quan did not dare to say this, but he knew that it did not matter much whether Senior Xu went or not. Given Senior Xu's personality, it might not be a good thing for him to actually see the Emperor. After all, the Emperor's power was nothing in the eyes of people like Senior Xu. If he really wanted to disrespect the Emperor, he would not hesitate at all. But Lin Jin was a normal person. If Lin Jin could persuade Senior Xu to release the State Preceptor, there was a high chance that he would do so. Yin Quan calculated in his mind, but didn't let it show on his face. This man was as shrewd as the bottom of a lake. "Appraiser Lin, let's go then." Having said that, Yin Quan thanked appraiser Ouyang before leading Lin Jin away. This was Lin Jin's second visit to Heavenly Jade Palace. But this time, he was going to meet Emperor Heavenly Jade. This was the emperor of a premium country. His status, authority, and influence couldn't be compared to Jade Dragon Kingdom's emperor, Qian. An average person wouldn't even have the chance to meet the emperor. Even if they did, they would be nervous and afraid. However, Lin Jin had seen the world, so there weren't many situations that could make him nervous. This was the thought that popped into his mind when he arrived outside a magnificent hall. Lin Jin was currently about 100 steps away from the hall. There was a white jade platform between them, and the surroundings were empty. The stone slabs in the plaza before him were carved with various beast carvings. As the saying went, the layman enjoys the show while the connoisseur recognizes the artistry. With a quick glance, Lin Jin knew that these carvings were special. Chapter 536. Some places were carved from the bones of wild beasts, while others were buried with the corpses of wild beasts. The power of different types of wild beasts was mixed together with magical techniques to create a balanced and hidden power. When needed, it could be directly activated and could suppress almost any enemy. Of course, the prerequisite was that the enemy had to be standing on this plaza. It could be seen that the person who designed this place was an expert. Perhaps it was to prevent people from killing their way into the palace. Before reaching the main hall where the emperor resided, there was a specially prepared killing formation here. Once it was activated, even if there were hundreds or thousands of people, it could be instantly killed. This was a 100-beast killing formation. Lin Jin guessed that a senior from Heavenly Jade Academy must have helped to set it up. With Yin Quan leading the way, Lin Jin strolled across the plaza as well. Speaking of which, he actually felt a little nervous. After all, Yin Quan might not know what kind of place he was stepping on, but Lin Jin did. It was akin to knowing that there were landmines beneath one's feet. No one would be able to walk across it calmly if they were in his shoes. That was how Lin Jin was currently behaving. Up ahead, Yin Quan would occasionally turn back to check on Lin Jin. Truth be told, Lin Jin's overly calm demeanor made Yin Quan assume that he wasn't afraid or nervous at all. But now, seeing how cautious Lin Jin was and how nervous he was, Yin Quan mused, that's right. Even the other rank 4 beast appraisers couldn't maintain their composure when they came to meet His Majesty. After all, while rank 4 beast appraisers were respected, Emperor Tianxian reigned supreme. There were many rank 4 beast appraisers, but only one emperor. Now, Lin Jin's reaction was normal. Both men had differing thoughts as they slowly approached the front of the hall. Suddenly, a cloud of mist appeared in front of them. Lightning flashed within the cloud before a large creature appeared. A large lion's head was revealed. It wasn't an average lion's head. It had a humongous head with eyes as large as basins, a wide mouth, a round nose, and faintly discernible teeth. Half of its body was made of flesh, and the other half was thundercloud. Just its sudden appearance alone was enough to intimidate people. No doubt, this was a rank 5 beast. Moreover, it had been a long time since it reached rank 5. Not only was it powerful, but it also seemed to possess a high level of intelligence. Stop right there. The thundercloud lion actually opened its mouth to speak. Seeing this, Yin Quan was immediately startled and stepped forward to salute. Greetings, General Heavenly Lion. I'm Yin Quan, the head supervisor of the Imperial Palace's internal affairs. To Lin Jin's surprise, Yin Quan was behaving so respectfully toward this gigantic lion. As a rank 4 beast appraiser, Lin Jin could tell at a glance that this rank 5 pet beast wasn't a blood-packed pet beast. It was a genuine monster. Only demonic beasts could have such intelligence to refine their hyoid bones and speak the human language. Due to the confinement of the blood contract power, ferocious beasts could not refine the hyoid bone. This was the biggest difference. Lin Jin had heard that Spiral Nation had several guardian beasts. To be able to become the guardian beast of Heavenly Spiral Country, it had to be at least rank 5. There seemed to be such a general celestial lion among them. No matter what, Lin Jin was now one of Heavenly Spiral Academy's teachers, so he was aware of this. Yin Quan explained the situation. He was probably curious as to why the Heavenly Lion General would suddenly come here. Someone His Majesty wants to see? Sure. Let him in, but his pet beast must stay behind to play with me, General Celestial Lion said gleefully. This? Yin Quan was stunned. He wasn't a fool. He immediately realized that General Celestial Lion was purposely making things difficult for Appraiser Lin. In an instant, Yin Quan thought of many things. After all, he was a veteran of the palace and knew many secrets. General Celestial Lion held a high status as one of the guardian beasts, but without His Majesty's permission, he wouldn't come here to make things difficult for others. In other words, this was most likely His Majesty's intention. His Majesty is giving him an eye for an eye. Yin Quan understood now. His Majesty's previous attempts at summoning Yin Quan were met with no results, and he was still resentful. Of course, it wouldn't be a complete fallout, but it would definitely embarrass Appraiser Lin. For example, leaving Yin Quan's pet beast here and General Celestial Lion would teach him a lesson or even frighten him. This was an old trick that His Majesty often played, and Yin Quan was very familiar with it. In the past, when His Majesty was having fun with this trick, he would even show up personally and pretend to show concern for the other party. But deep down, His Majesty was delighted. It seemed like His Majesty was going to use this trick on Appraiser Lin today. Yin Quan was only a chief steward, so he wouldn't dare to influence His Majesty's intentions. Hence, he pretended not to notice. Yin Quan glanced at Lin Jin, who stared at General Celestial Lion for a moment before asking, "I ask if this is a rule of the palace?" "Of course," General Celestial Lion answered with a straight face. It was also Lin Jin's first time meeting Tian Xian's emperor, so he didn't know the rules. He would just go with whatever the man said. Although he could tell that General Celestial Lion was deliberately making things difficult for him, after giving it some thought, he didn't think he would be at a disadvantage here. At this, Lin Jin raised his arm, and a ball of flame coalesced on his arm before transforming into a fire wolf. This fire wolf wasn't huge, just the size of an average wolf beast. However, its fur was as bright as the flames. "Xiaohua, stay here," Lin Jin instructed before following Yin Quan into the hall. Xiaohua was very obedient, sitting where he was without moving at all. On the other hand, the Heavenly Lion General's huge lion face was filled with pride. He watched as Lin Jin and Yin Quan entered the hall, then turned his head to look at Xiaohua, who looked no different from a tiny child in his eyes. He said, "Little guy, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame that master of yours." General Celestial Lion let out an odd chuckle as he slowly approached Xiaohua. Across from him was the innocent-looking Xiaohua. Inside the hall, Yin Quan felt conflicted. He had a good impression of Appraiser Lin, and the fact that he released his pet beast without hesitation proved that Lin Jin was a magnanimous person. Hence, Yin Quan wanted to subtly remind Lin Jin. At this thought, Yin Quan said, "Appraiser Lin, your pet beast looks very ordinary. It looks like a fire wolf, but since it's a rank 4 beast appraiser's blood contract pet beast, there must be something special about it, right?" Lin Jin smiled. "You're right, Manager Yin. That pet beast of mine is a fire wolf." He wasn't wrong, but Xiaohua's fire wolf wasn't normal at all. Yin Quan added, "General Celestial Lion is a rare beast that carries the aura of a beast king. It can intimidate other beasts. Appraiser Lin's pet beast might be affected if you leave it outside. I've heard that beast appraisers have many spells, and one of them is to stabilize a pet beast's mind. Appraiser Lin, why don't you use this spell to stabilize your pet beast's mind so it won't be intimidated by General Celestial Lion?" Stunned, Lin Jin glanced at Yin Quan. The latter chuckled, but didn't meet Lin Jin's gaze. Chapter 537. It's fine. This is the palace's restricted area, so nothing should happen here. Moreover, although my pet beast is average, it's quite courageous. Lin Jin didn't seem to mind at all. Yin Quan thought to himself, forget it. I've already committed a taboo by warning Lin Jin. If His Majesty were to find out about this, I'll probably be punished. Since Appraiser Lin doesn't mind, I'll just pretend I didn't say anything. Appraiser Lin, this way, please, Yin Quan said, acting as if nothing had happened. There were many guards in the hall, and each of them was quite strong. Their armor was heavy, and their pet beasts were impressive. Most importantly, the guards' pet beasts were all rank 4. The strength of a premium country was evident here. There was a small door up ahead. It looked inconspicuous, but the guards there were the tightest. Lin Jin noticed that Yin Quan's footsteps were light as he approached the door. Appraiser Lin, please wait here for a moment. I'll report this to His Majesty. Yin Quan turned around and informed Lin Jin before entering the small door. Soon, he came out again to invite Lin Jin in. Lin Jin knew that Emperor Heavenly Jade was inside. He tidied up his attire before stepping inside. Inside was a study. An elderly man dressed in an emperor's robe was reading through memorials. As the emperor of a premium country, his territory was larger and he had more people under his care. Naturally, the workload was heavier. Suddenly, a thought popped into Lin Jin's mind. Feng Ziqian and the other princes had put in so much effort to fight for the throne. But was it really enough just to get it? Being in a high position meant that one had to shoulder corresponding responsibilities. To some people, this pressure could be a terrifying torment. Lin Jin himself couldn't stand it. He preferred to be a carefree beast appraiser. His pursuit of immortality was only for the sake of longevity. Other than Emperor Heavenly Jade, there was also a lowly servant serving him, and Yin Quan, who had just entered. There were no guards or pet beasts. An audience like this would leave a good impression. It meant that His Majesty didn't put his guard up against him and trusted him. Lin Jin knew what to do. He bowed at the yellow-robed elderly man. Lin Jin of Heavenly Spiral Academy greets Your Majesty. Although Heavenly Spiral Nation had a lot of etiquette, the standards weren't that high. For example, not everyone had to kneel in front of the emperor. Moreover, Lin Jin was no ordinary person. He was a rank 4 beast appraiser and a teacher of the academy. His identity had been established by ancestor Heavenly Spiral, so he didn't have to bow. This was a form of respect for beast appraisers. Emperor Feng Junwu put down the book in his hand and looked up at Lin Jin. Despite his aged appearance, the emperor had a unique aura about him. After all, he was the emperor of a high-class country. The original clouds and mist had evaporated, and the exposed fur was charred black, turning it bald. Feng Junwo looked at it for a long time before he recognized it. It was one of the guardian beasts of the Heavenly Spiral Nation, General Heavenly Lion. General Celestial Lion was currently trembling in fear in a corner. Upon a closer look, one could see several balls of flames hovering around General Celestial Lion. They were practically sticking to General Celestial Lion, forcing him to remain motionless. However, his posture was rather comical. He looked like a young widow who had been stripped naked and bullied by a strong man. It was such a spectacular sight that Feng Junwu was dumbfounded. It took him a long time to snap out of his daze, so Lin Jin wasn't surprised to see such a sight. General Celestial Lion had been up to no good from the start, and Lin Jin could tell that. He remained unmoved because he had absolute confidence in Xiaohua. Although Xiaohua was just an ordinary fire wolf, it had undergone a perfect evolution. Moreover, its body had been tempered with dragon fire, mystical fire, and phoenix fire. With the yin-yang dharma body, it was definitely an existence that stood at the peak of the pyramid among the rank 5 beasts. Although General Celestial Lion wasn't too bad, Lin Jin had secretly appraised him and found him to be much weaker than Xiaohua. Hence, General Celestial Lion had chosen the wrong opponent to bully Xiaohua. However, it seemed like Xiaohua was quite ruthless. Not only did he destroy General Celestial Lion's cloud beast form, but he also burned off quite a bit of its fur. This was considered a serious injury. Although General Celestial Lion was reaping what he sowed, he still had to show Tian Xian's emperor some respect. It was only at that moment that General Heavenly Lion understood the difference between him and the Firewolf Beast. Although they were both at the 5th level, the Firewolf Beast's strength was enough to defeat him. Although he didn't want to admit it, it was the truth. While it was embarrassing, staying alive was more important than anything else. When he saw Lin Jin approaching, General Sky Lion was truly afraid that the latter would summon his pet beast to teach him another lesson. Hence, he couldn't help but retreat and cry out in alarm. General Celestial Lion, don't be afraid. I've just reprimanded my pet beast. I'll treat you now. Lin Jin saluted him with a smile. General Sky Lion was currently leaning against a corner of the wall. He couldn't resist looking in Emperor Heavenly Jade's direction. Seemingly having seen something, General Sky Lion seemed to have calmed down for a moment before saying, "If you want to treat me, go ahead." Judging from his tone, he didn't seem to believe that Lin Jin could cure him. Everything else aside, his cloudy beast body was extremely difficult to recover from. In order to condense this cloudy beast body, General Sky Lion had cultivated for many years. If he wanted to cultivate it again, it would probably take him more than a decade. General Sky Lion had suffered a huge loss this time. However, he knew very well that he could only blame himself for being inferior. No one else could be blamed for this loss. On the other hand, Lin Jin appeared very relaxed. He walked over and casually patted the Heavenly Lion General's burnt fur. A cloud of mist appeared out of thin air and attached itself to the area. Speaking of which, General Sky Lion's injury wasn't as serious as it seemed. Lin Jin reckoned that it hadn't damaged his foundation yet. After all, Xiaohua had a sense of propriety. If you attacked first, you couldn't blame the other party for retaliating. Of course, you had to retaliate, but you didn't kill him. Otherwise, General Sky Lion might not even be able to speak now. However, it was true that Lin Jin managed to break General Sky Lion's cloudy beast body. That cloudy beast body was General Sky Lion's innate skill. With a single sweep of the cloud, it could rise into the air. After breaking this skill, General Sky Lion's strength would definitely be reduced. Emperor Heavenly Jade looked like he wanted to vent his anger, but had nowhere to vent it. Lin Jin didn't care about this at all. After all, it was just a small conflict. It wasn't a big deal. Lin Jin had repaid evil with good, so even Emperor Heavenly Jade would have to accept this favor. Now that General Sky Lion didn't have his cloudy beast body, it was indeed impossible for others to do anything. But to Lin Jin, it was nothing. He had the water reservoir armor that could absorb spirit water and turn it into spirit mist. In addition, Lin Jin knew cloud treading, so it wouldn't be difficult to refine a cloudy beast body for General Sky Lion. Teacher Lin, I heard that your master, curator, wishes to study the heavenly tomes written by a peerless Taoist lord 500 years ago. It just so happens that my manor once received a painting personally drawn by the Taoist lord, so I brought it here today. Teacher Lin, please give it to curator. Who knows, there might be some strange words on this painting that curator might discover, Feng Zishan said. Lin Jin was dumbstruck. He took a deep breath, thinking not bad. This time, he had truly scratched his itch. In Feng Zishan's hand was a painting. Truth be told, Lin Jin really wanted to take it, but he knew that Feng Zishan was trying to rope him in. If it was the tea or some other small gifts, Lin Jin could accept it. It wasn't a big deal, but this was different. If he accepted it, he would be on Feng Zishan's side. This was something Lin Jin couldn't do. Lin Jin had his own principles. How could he switch sides just because of some benefits? But then again, he didn't have to stand on Feng Ziqian's side. For a moment, Lin Jin was conflicted. He didn't take it. No matter what, Feng Ziqian was a visitor of the visitation hall. Moreover, he had a decent character and was sincere. Lin Jin didn't have to insist on supporting Feng Ziqian, but he couldn't find a reason to abandon the man either. It's just a painting. Even if there's an inscription on it, it should just be some elegant words. There shouldn't be anything important, Lin Jin reassured himself. Still, he didn't take it. Of course, Feng Zishan could tell. He placed the painting on the table and said, I understand Master Lin's concerns. Although Zishan really wants to be friends with Master Lin, and even hopes that Master Lin will help me to obtain the position of Crown Prince. If Master Lin isn't willing, Zishan won't force you. Today, Zishan is purely here to befriend you. This painting is also a gift from Zishan with sincerity. Master Lin, you don't have to worry. In the future, even if Master Lin helps my third brother with all your might, Zishan won't have a single word of complaint. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.